This is it.
This is what?
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
Come on, Sam. Remember what Bilbo used to say? It's a dangerous business,
Frodo, going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Shortly before they stopped to eat, Tom brought his bike to its customary skidding halt. He was staring at a signpost which had been sunk into a cement plug half buried in the soft shoulder at the side of the road. Nick looked at it. The sign said, "You are leaving Harper County, Oklahoma. You are entering Woods County, Oklahoma." "I can read that," Tom said, and if Nick had been able to hear, he would have been partly amused and partly touched by the way Tom's voice climbed into a high, reedy, and declamatory register. "You are now going out of Harper County. You are now going into Woods County." He turned to Nick. "You know what, mister?" Nick shook his head. "I never been out of Harper County in my life. Laws, no. Not Tom Cullen, but once my daddy took me out here and showed me this sign. He told me if he ever caught me t'other side of it, he'd whale the tar out of me. I sure hope he don't catch us over there in Woods County. You think he will?" Nick shook his head emphatically. "Is Kansas City in Wood County?" Nick shook his head again. "But we're going into Woods County before we go anyplace else, ain't we?" Nick nodded. Tom's eyes gleamed. "Is it the world?" Nick didn't understand. He frowned, raised his eyebrows, shrugged. "The world is... the place, I mean," Tom said. "Are we going into the world, mister?" Tom hesitated, and then asked with hesitant gravity, "Is woods the word for world?" Slowly, Nick nodded his head. "Okay," Tom said. He looked at the sign for a moment, then wiped his right eye, from which a single tear had trickled. Then he hopped back onto his bike. "Okay, let's go." He biked over to the county line without another word, and Nick followed.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the horrorofbabylonpodcast@gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/thehorrorofbabylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 99 of The Horror of Babylon, where we revisit The Stand by Stephen King. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
I can dig that happy crappy.
You believe that happy crappy?
Yeah.
And Hef's here too?
Laws, no, not Hef.
Well, then who are you?
M-O-O-N, that spells Hef.
And if you can believe that happy crappy, we have 5 patrons. And thank you to Abigail the First, Mother Abigail.
Is she a magical woman waiting for us in a cornfield now?
If she is, she should probably text us and let us know, because we're not on our way to a cornfield or anything.
Yeah.
We'd sooner get lost in the cornfield trying to find our way out.
Yeah.
There's just too much fucking corn! Okay.
And
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron, and Ben, the 4th Patron of Hope, and Mia the 5th, the Rainmaker.
She makes it rain.
And 4 Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or you can shop online at shop.4horsemancomics.com. And if you do happen to go there, then make sure you say hello to the not-so-black man, the sitting dude, the one who is all but Legion, the bunch of other ridiculous names, a.k.a. Ronald III, Grampus of Christmas.
The frowning guy.
The frowning guy.
He does not keep a bunch of pamphlets in his back pocket.
Well, he does, but I can't say what they're for without outing somebody, so we'll just leave it at that. So, welcome to Season 3 of The Horror of Babylon. We are kicking it off by announcing that we're doing a season-long, or mostly season-long project. We are going to be covering the Dark Tower series with a couple of addendums. We're going to be covering the novels on the first Sunday of every month, moving forward until we finish them. We're actually going to start today with The Stand, because it is related to the Dark Tower. We're going to start, and then in December, on the first Sunday, we are going to cover The Eyes of the Dragon, and then the formal Dark Tower series will begin in January with The Gunslinger, and then thereon we'll do the 7 books plus the Wizard's Eye and Glass, or what that extra one is. So
Woohoo! Gunslinger.
Yay! And if you haven't been around too long, the reason we're kind of doing The Stand now is because it was the very first book we ever covered. We did 3 episodes 1, 2, and 3 of The Horror of Babylon are our original episodes on The Stand. And I have said I'm going to do this before, and I've never done it, but I'm actually going to do it this time. I'm going to be remastering those old episodes, increasing the volume on them, and re-releasing them both on YouTube and in the podcast feed so that you can actually listen.
Hear them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that will be coming soon. I'm going to do it by the end of 2023, I promise.
That's your New Year's resolution?
No.
No.
Yeah, I picked my 2023 New Year's resolutions in November.
That seems right.
That is the most ambitious.
Trigger warning. All of it.
Yeah.
If there's something that messes you up, it's probably in this book.
Yeah.
In some form or fashion. Okay, so let's kick it off with our history with The Stand. Hef, why don't you start us off?
Alrighty. Well, I was not here for the original incarnation of this particular podcast episode a couple years ago. But, as you know, I show up every now and then. And in that time, I did go ahead and read The Stand. I finished it up about, 2 months ago, probably. And that was... I'd finished it before then. It was quite the undertaking as far as trying to get through it and read it. This one was very different in the sense that, it was longer, but, it felt like it went quicker. And I think it's more just because, I had already read a very long book, and then this next one I read was just I already kind of broke the ice with the other one, so...
Did you do the audiobook for The Stand?
No.
Okay. I thought you did for some reason.
I started it, and then I had my phone... I had a lot of problems with my Audible account for a hot minute, and so I ended up just reading the rest of it. I think I got through... I was still in part 1 whenever I had that issue, so...
So not very much of it.
No, it wasn't. I think I'd just gotten to where Franny and Harold had left, so it was still pretty early. So it took me a while, but again, I was already kind of committed to it, so it just ended up finishing up. So about 2 months ago, I finished it up.
I finished rereading it today.
Nice.
Last weekend.
Cool.
And it was a trial. Not because the book was bad, but because I was just constantly reading because it's thick, and I'm a slow reader.
Same.
I did the audiobook, so I didn't have any issues, but...
I only just, in the last 2 weeks, got that Audible thing fixed. So It was actually the phone was the issue, because what would happen is, like, my phone would play it, but, I have like a 35-minute drive between my house and work, and that would be the most accessible time to do it. And for some reason, I could not get my phone to pair with my car, so it would just it'd play on my phone, but it would it would say it's playing it through the car, and then it just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's kind of shit.
Yeah,
So,
that sucks.
More often than not, I just end up listening to, when I'm in the car, I just end up listening to it on the speaker on my phone instead of like taking the time to pair it to the Bluetooth of my car.
yeah, that would have been the smarter thing to do, but I'm lazy. So I just read it, which makes no sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
I'll show you how lazy I am.
Daniel, your history with The Stand.
Okay, so I was sort of, aware of the book's existence in the back of my head. It was one of those ones that you see on the shelf when you see, like, the Stephen King section. They call it the horror section, but 90% of it's Stephen King books.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this at the time, but I had seen the adaptation, the original.
The 94 miniseries.
Yeah, the miniseries. And the only thing I had remembered from that was the Hand of God. That was like the one thing that stuck out in my mind. When we start doing this podcast, I think you're the one that suggested we do The Stand, right?
We were looking for something that neither of us had read,
yeah.
but was also popular and long.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was me or you who suggested it, but we decided on it together.
And then I read it at the height of the pandemic, which did not help me, especially when I was babysitting patients in full hazmat gear, just sitting there reading it by my little desk light, going,
Yeah, I don't like it.
and then they would cough, and then other nurses in hazmat gear would come in and give them treatments, and I would just back away a little bit more.
Just how many times did you go to the front of the book and be just like, when was this printed?
Yeah. When I read it this time, I have this horrible habit when I'm reading something for the podcast. Maybe it's not a bad habit, but if I see something I like, I write it on a Post-it note and stick it in the page. But it was happening every other page, and my book was getting thicker and thicker. So I forced myself to not take any more like physical notes about 100, 200 pages in. Because I'm like, it won't be able to shut by the time I'm done.
Yeah.
So
I just use a notebook.
Yeah, I just use the notepad on my phone.
yeah. I like to have the notes on the page that the thing is on. That way I can pull it open and reference it.
Mine's just a kinetic thing. Like, if I write it down, I will generally remember it. But if I with you, if I put it into my phone, it's forgotten immediately. Like, I will not retrieve it.
Thankfully, I don't have that issue because all of my work is on a computer.
That's good. I got sticky notes all over my computer at work. I'm the reason the rainforest is dying.
It's okay. We had a good run.
I haven't used a sticky note in like 10 years.
What must that be like?
Freeing. Less sticky.
You've reached enlightenment.
And that's pretty much my history with it. We read it, reviewed it. I really enjoyed it, minus a few things. I can't remember where it is on my ranking list. I purposely did not look before coming in tonight. So I'm kind of interested to see how that stands.
Oh, mine is basically the same as yours. When I started actually reading Stephen King books, I knew that The Stand was his most popular book, and so I saved it, and I read like a bunch of the other like really iconic ones first. It, Pet Sematary, Shining, and then I think that was I don't know if it was a mistake, but I think it ended up hurting my opinion of this book initially. I do think this book is very good, but I also think it fails in a lot of ways that some of his later books don't.
Yeah, it has a lot of very early like Stephen King things.
This was, I believe, his fourth published novel.
Yeah,
and so it was early in the it was published in 1978. And I think for me, his kind of peak writing is like mid to late 80s.
Yeah,
with It and Pet Sematary and a couple other books. So this is a very good book, but I think there were things that could have been better or would have been better had he written it later in his career.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof. that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
So jumping into background, this is described by Wikipedia as a post-apocalyptic dark fantasy novel written by American author Stephen King. It was published on October 3rd, 1978. In 1990, The Stand was reprinted as the complete and uncut edition, in which Stephen King restored over 400 pages of the original text, which he was originally forced to cut from the first publication of the novel so that they could save money on printing costs. He also revised the order of the chapters. He changed the time that the novel takes place from 1980 to 1990, and he updated it with cultural references. For instance, like, he references Tom Cruise at one point in the book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this was published in 1970. Oh, yeah, that's right. And George Bush also gets name dropped in this book, which would not have happened in 1978, but in 1990 when he was updating the references. Yeah. The uncut edition is his longest standalone book at 1,152 pages, surpassing It, which is 1,138 pages. If you don't count the uncut edition, then It is his longest novel, so those are the two longest. In terms of inspiration, he wanted to just try writing something super long. He was inspired to make a contemporary American version of The Lord of the Rings, which we will discuss in themes if we think he succeeded to that or not. But he was also inspired by the George R. Stewart novel Earth Abides, which, according to Wikipedia, describes the odyssey of one of the last human survivors after the population is nearly annihilated by a plague.
I'll have to read that at some point.
Yeah, I think that's definitely since we've done The Stand twice and we've also done
The Scarlet Plague.
I think we should do that.
I Am Legend would be another one that's kind of in that same vein.
Yeah, I think we should do both of those. The book was a #1 bestseller and has sold 4.5 million copies. It's been included in lists of the best books of all time by publications such as Rolling Stone, Time, Amazon, and the BBC. In terms of other Stand-related material, The Stand is actually predated by the short story Night Surf, which takes place in the same universe as The Stand and also involves the Captain Trips virus. Night Surf was published in the spring 1969 issue of Hubris, and it was later collected in King's first short story collection, Night Shift. Daniel and I reviewed Night Surf. I don't remember the episode. I think it was like episode 9 or something, but it was the episode where we reviewed the Stand Marvel comic adaptation. We also did Night Surf.
Didn't we also end up watching one of the dollar babies of it?
Yeah.
That was funny.
I've watched 3 or 4 dollar babies of Night Surf, and they're different.
I can't wait till we do our dollar baby to get judged.
Yeah. There have been 3 adaptations of The Stand. There's the original 1994 miniseries, which was 4 episodes long, directed by Mick Garris, written by Stephen King, and produced by ABC. And then there's the 2020 miniseries, which was 10 episodes long. Josh Boone was the showrunner, had various writers, and the final episode of that show is an epilogue written by Stephen King, which completely takes place after the novel has ended, and is supposed to be like essentially his apology to Fran, which we will bring that up again later.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
I wanted to rewatch just that one episode before this, but I didn't have time. And that was produced by CBS. And then there's also a 2008 Marvel comic adaptation written by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa and illustrated by Mike Perkins. Personally, I think the comic is the best adaptation.
I think the comic is the best adaptation.
By a lot.
Now that's coming straight from memory. I didn't do any of the adaptations for this. I
only read the book. I wanted to watch just that one episode, but I didn't have time.
So but from memory, I remember it adapted a lot of the things that some of the
shows
didn't.
It's the strongest. To me, it was the most true to the book.
Yeah.
And it was also just the best adaptation.
It paced itself pretty well, too. I remember the art being above passable.
Yeah.
So.
Have you read or watched any of the adaptations?
No, I have not.
Okay. I don't really recommend either of the miniseries unless you just want to be a completionist.
I kind of think the original's funny in some respects.
If I had to make you watch one, I would say the newer one, only because of Owen Teague as Harold Lauder.
Oh god, yeah, he does such a good job.
Yeah, he's the only reason I think it's like, maybe not the only reason.
He broke his back carrying that show.
Yeah, exactly. They both have their highs and lows, but ultimately I think they both kind of fail.
I think the best adaptation exists somewhere between those two.
Yeah.
And we'll never get it. We're never going to get a third one.
Is it the newer one with Rob Lowe? Like Rob Lowe's in one of them?
No, he's in the original.
Is it the original? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew he was in one of them.
He plays Nick in the original.
What?
Okay.
So there's actually a pretty star-studded cast between them. Well, real quick. So in the original, Gary Sinise, Lieutenant Dan, plays Stu Redman.
Awesome.
Molly Ringwald plays Fran.
Oh.
Yeah, look at his eyebrows raised.
So in the new one, James Marsden plays Stu.
James Marsden is Cyclops?
Cyclops, yes.
Oh. I like him as an actor, actually.
Yeah, I like him too.
Yeah.
Whoopi Goldberg plays Mother Abigail.
Yeah.
Here's some other funny ones. Amber Heard plays Nadine in the new one.
Oh, no.
I'm not here to shit on Amber Heard, but she is the worst part of that show, probably. She's like the worst adapted character, I would say, in that one. There's lots of little fun things.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
So let's move on to structure and themes. So first, I just want to get your guys your thoughts on the general structure. It's broken up into 3 books. There's an omniscient narrator who jumps perspectives between the characters. A lot of criticisms say it's too long. Some people say it's too short, including that's Stephen King's one criticism. I'd like to get your thoughts first on the structure of the book.
Yes, the book is in 3 parts, of which I would say it goes from really good to still okay to okay, can we be done?
Hey, it's our first few episodes.
The structure, like structurally though, it makes sense. Like, because the first part's all that world building and all the, basically humanity reacting to Captain Trips and like it going into very kind of eerily scary detail of like how it's imagined that the world would kind of like handle that, and it
badly.
And I'm not gonna lie, like now post-COVID is when I'm reading this, so it was eerie to kind of read this book that was conceived of way back when, and then reading about stuff like that it's mentioning so long ago, to the point where like just recently we got past the COVID pandemic, and I'm just like, there's a lot of shit in here that actually kind of holds up. Like, obviously not to that level of like, I'm gonna say absurdity, but there was still absurdity.
Yeah.
So and it was eerie to read, but at the same time I think it's what made it really good, because like it packed punch in that first section. So world building, along with just actively, excellent telling of what would happen in that kind of scenario. The second part is more, I think, about like you've got your world kind of built, so now they're trying to basically take your characters that you've kind of started to bond with, and you're trying to make society, I guess, come back together. Like, because you have the people that are like generally trying to reclaim society or reclaim what they once had, even though they have difficulty with it, and some people disagree with how it should be handled and things like that. But that was still pretty interesting, like seeing how society kind of tries to rebuild itself with morals that may not necessarily be as relevant as what they were before said event happened. And then you get to part 3, and it's kind of like, I hate to be that way, but it just kind of feels like just a dog rush to the end. Although it's just a really, 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 really slow dog rush to the end. It's like somebody put on Huskies and tried to go across the Alaska for the Iditarod. It's kind of what it felt like.
Basically, we had the same opinion in our... It's like the best... Real good, pretty good, not so good.
Yeah, that's how I saw it.
My opinion has mostly stayed the same with little changes here and there. Daniel?
My opinion has also mostly just stayed the same. I don't remember if I said it should be longer or shorter whenever...
I think it could be either.
I think it could be either. I think he could have either ended the story sooner or it needed another 150 pages.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's no in-between, but he chose the in-between.
Well...
I think the direction of the third one is kind of where I start to fall off.
He didn't really choose the in-between because he was forced to cut out 400 pages to begin with, so it couldn't have been even longer.
My whole crack on it is that I just think that third part just goes in a very strange direction compared to... we'll probably get into this after a bit, but as a brief note... There's a lot that's kind of built up in the first 2 parts, and then I feel like in the third part he just kind of drops the ball with a lot of the stuff that he's built up, and it just doesn't stick, and that's kind of where I had the biggest problem with the book.
Yeah, I think that his reputation for not sticking the landings, maybe a lot of that starts here. I generally disagree with that, but...
I do too.
This is one of the times where I tend to agree more. But I think we can get more into that when we talk about each character.
Yeah.
And how their story is resolved or not resolved.
Yeah. It felt a lot to me that he just didn't really know how to end something as long as he put the much work into.
Honestly, I think is fair.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
How exactly do you end this book?
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about themes, and let's kick that off with a discussion of genre. Now, we're reviewing this on a horror podcast, and it certainly is a horror novel, but Wikipedia describes it as a post-apocalyptic dark fantasy. So, Daniel, maybe you could tell us about what are some of the horror elements that are in the book, and then Hef, maybe you could talk to us about what are some of the non-horror genre elements.
Sure.
A lot of the horror elements are just in how it takes its time to build up the fear, especially with Captain Trips. It's a very realistic fear. Seeing your kid being uncontrollable, have uncontrollable coughing fits. Keep talking. That put, at least in my experience, that puts the fear in the heart of every parent I've ever met. And it's very visceral with how it describes what it does to the human body. So you also kind of got body horror elements in this with the swollen throats, just how gross people become. They're vomiting and shitting all over themselves because they can't do anything else. They're stuck in a fevered state of a virus that just will not leave your system.
Well, there's also the fear, the unknown part of it. Yeah. Because that's when you're starting the book. That's where this is what got me was when you start the book, you don't really know what's going on. Yeah. You just have this very real thing that seems to be happening, and that is it really capitalizes on adult fear in that first part.
Very well. Adult fear is something that Stephen King is very good at. Mm-hmm. I think if you want to be a little bit more horror tropey with your fear, you do have a dude walking around that might be a literal demon. Mm. And you got very, very straight to the point, good versus evil, which that exists in a lot of subgenres. In this case, it's very, almost literally biblical. The government incompetency kind of makes me afraid. So,
yeah, that's a little too real.
Yeah,
that's how poorly the poorly stuff is handled. They have all these plans and all these actions that they're supposed to take, but they just very much drop them.
I mean, they didn't really have a plan for if it got out.
Yeah. It's just like, but the level. What's scary, I think, I'm agreeing here, is just the level of which when people fuck up, they really fuck up.
Yeah, the dude sees the red light and his door doesn't lock, so he goes, "I'm out of here."
Yeah. Like, I understand wanting to preserve your own life and save your kid, but
he inadvertently killed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I think those are when it comes to horror, those are the best things. I think the spooky supernatural shit honestly isn't scary at all in this book. Like the idea of Randall Flagg impregnating Nadine with presumably, I'm guessing, a demon baby. That doesn't scare me at all compared to like the virus apocalypse I just dealt with for like 500 pages.
So just real quick, turning back to the Charles Campion thing, and him inadvertently killing his family because he left his post. I think a theme of this book is that you don't know what repercussions your actions are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite examples of this is Stu kills everyone in the beginning of the book by flipping off the gas he flips off the gas pumps as Campion is about to crash in. If he would have just let that happen, kaboom.
I like that. The ones that stuck with me as I was.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. The ones that stuck with me, like the most, like some of those haunting ones, were the ones like they were, I guess, what would you call them? Like the tangents, I guess, where like there were people that he would name, and then he'd just be like, and at the end or something like that.
They are vignettes.
Yeah, vignettes. Yeah. They died.
No great loss.
And then, no great loss. The one that got me the most, I think, was the one where it's just like, this one broke her neck, but she didn't have it. Like, it was just I was like, fuck, dude.
Well, at the end of book one, it gives you the second culling, which are the people who were immune but died for other reasons.
Yeah.
Like the kid who fell off his bike, the kid who fell down a well, the guy who stepped on glass at the lake. And
one dude just has a heart attack because his family died. Well, that's not
he ran himself
and then had the heart attack.
The girl who blew herself up because she fired a gun with rusty bullets.
No great loss.
Yeah. Poor coincidence or just general ignorance.
Okay, I think we're branching into scary shit. So,
fair.
F, what are some non-horror genre elements? Some examples.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely, there is fantasy in here. Like anything involving Flagg is very fantastic and very, like, almost over the top to a degree with some of the stuff you get. Like, the fantasy elements are kind of where I have some slight tension with the rest of the book, because some of it, a lot of the beginning stuff feels so grounded in reality and adult fear that it's really haunting. And then you get to some of the fantasy stuff, and I feel like there's just some parts of it that are just so over the top that it kind of has a weird tension. I know we disagreed a lot whenever we had like Pet Sematary, where we talked about him kind of meshing different genres together. The difference, I think, is Pet Sematary does a better job with that because it is interwoven with the story very well. Whereas, to me, with this, it just kind of takes a complete deviation some of the times.
I don't think it's really the same because it's the real world stuff is jammed in the front of the book and the supernatural stuff is jammed at the end of the book. Whereas in Pet Sematary, it's happening at the same time.
Yeah. And so to me, maybe it's more dynamic. I could see it very much so. There's a bit of romance here, and surprisingly, like, I would say, like, romantic drama. Like, because, like, the whole thing between, like, Stu and Fran and Harold, and then you've got the stuff with Larry and Nadine and Lucy. Yeah, like, there's some legitimate, like, soap opera drama going on in some of those, and it's, like, heavy stuff on a couple of those occasions, so I didn't expect to actually have my heartstrings tugged a little bit a couple times when I'm reading, especially with like Larry and Lucy. I felt genuinely bad sometimes for Lucy.
Yeah, I do feel bad for Lucy.
Yeah.
I think she seemed like in the epilogue, she seems like she's going to be okay.
I do, yeah. No, I felt good about that at the end. Definitely sci-fi. Most of the time I was reading this, like I was picking up huge Fallout vibes.
Yeah,
like post like obviously blowing shit up, but like there's still a lot of like kind of wastelandy aftermath kind of stuff, and
you even have factions forming.
Yeah, very much so. So I liked that a lot. I thought that was really cool for me. I'm a big Fallout guy.
I'm also a big Fallout guy.
Yeah. And as far as other themes, I mean, those are the three that really stick out to me.
Flag reminded me of an evil Gandalf.
I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna take you on a strange journey.
Yeah. In relation to Lloyd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
An archdemon.
That's him showing up at the Shire, taking
Bilbo.
He's like, yeah, you're gonna do some stuff, buddy.
An archdemon is never late for no Baggins.
What would you say are the key themes in this book? There's obviously dozens of themes, but like, what are like the big ones?
I would say probably the biggest theme is loss and how people deal with it, because that permeates the entirety of the book up until the ending.
I feel more like it's... I think it's less... I didn't get lost as much. Like, there's points of it. I'm not saying there isn't. But the big theme I picked up on is living with your mistakes. And just even if you don't even know if you've made a mistake. How many times did it reference, like your example, with Stu just, all he had to do was just not turn off the pumps and, maybe not a mistake so much, but it's just like, this is a cause and effect. Like, this whole book's a butterfly effect.
Yeah, like it's one thing growing into the other.
One thing just grows into something more massive, and like it's kind of like, to me, the biggest theme is kind of the unturned page.
Yeah, good versus evil is also probably just the like most in-your-face theme.
I was going to say that's the theme.
Yeah, that's not even subtext. That's like,
look at the cover.
Yeah, here's what the story's about.
Why does it look like a Star Wars cover?
Because it's good versus evil.
Tell me that's not Luke Skywalker.
That's what Star Wars is good versus evil.
Yeah. It's one of the three core themes of Star Wars are good versus evil, hope, and found family.
Yeah.
And this actually crosses into all three of those.
You literally got people forming their community as the book goes along.
Yeah. Larry Dad, Nadine Mom, Lucy Mom.
But, and good and evil, I think, is, and we'll get more into this when we get into characters and get into, Boulder versus Las Vegas. I believe I talked about this when we first did the episode, is a lot of the evil in this book isn't, like, twirling your mustache evil. They're these people that are just kind of showing up and choosing a side. It's very... Flag aside, a lot of it's very everyday evil.
Flag in some of his uppers.
Yeah, some of his uppers. But most of the people showing up...
They're regular people.
One of the things I hated the most about the more recent miniseries was how over the top they made Las Vegas. Because I'm like, of course I don't care if these people die. Whereas the other people, like in the book, you have these people sort of making what would to them would be like a logical choice. Here's a very organized city with a...
they have power, they have phones, they have schools.
They have very strict laws. Mm-hmm. They... God, who got crucified?
Oh.
Heck, Drogon?
Yeah, like that was like a really big thing, and that's sort of where, fuck. I'm blanking on his name. Lloyd. Yeah. Where he makes his, like, biggest... A lot of people in this book have their... This is where they cross their line in the sand, or this is their Rubicon. That was his. Mm-hmm. Flag told me I have to crucify you.
For all of the major characters, once we get to characters, I will be asking, what was so-and-so's stand?
Okay. Well, there you go.
A lot of people would say this is the post-apocalyptic novel. Now, I had a question for each of you here, and Daniel, you probably already touched on some of this in your previous rantings. But what does this novel draw from classic horror literature such as
The Scarlet Plague? When it comes to classics, it does a lot of the build-up and a lot of the aftermath well. Like, it's not just that there was an apocalypse. It's here's what an apocalypse does to the world, and here's what it does to people. Good horror, in my opinion, has always been, it's not about the spooky ghost. It's about people. It's about characters. And
when we are recording Evil Dead later, remember you said that.
When it comes to good horror literature, I don't think you could do an Evil Dead book. I will write the Evil Dead book. Let me do it, Sam Raimi.
Go ahead.
And then there was a fountain of blood.
He feels like he'd be pretty loose.
And in the Scarlet Plague, I think one of the best things it does is it shows you the de-evolution of people. Like from when people are first panicking all the way to how the great-grandkids are treating their grandfather.
Grandfer.
Yeah, Grandfer. And just they're becoming more animalistic, but one of them wants the weapons.
I'm sorry, Grandfer, we don't have any crabs. Oh.
It's like and you get a lot of the same stuff in this book, and it's like I said before, with people making their logical choices. Well, of course you're going to go to the, especially if you're a person who need immediate gratification, I'm going to go to the place that has electricity. So I think that that's something it does very well. It also does, what's the word I'm looking for? Like cult leaders very well. Very magnanimous leaders. People who can really draw you in. You have both Flag and Mother Abigail, but they're very different. Flag is very good at pitching himself, where Abigail wants you to be, raise yourself up.
And it will not be hard to believe that when the second Stand miniseries was airing in 2020, lots and lots of people were comparing Randall Flagg to Donald Trump. But you could really release that in any decade, and they're maybe not as extreme as Trump, but there will be some political person who's in a
there's some kind of
I would have compared it to Jonestown would be my go-to. But yeah.
So Hef, how do modern apocalypse stories kind of draw from the Stand, but also how are they different?
I mean, I would say that they're really not very different. Well, it's the inevitability you run into with any sort of media, right? Nothing's new under the sun, right? I think, after reading this book, I can really kind of look back on a lot of the stuff that I'm a big sci-fi, post-apocalyptic kind of guy, and I could see a lot of inspiration for a lot of stuff I really like coming out of this book. I think the biggest difference between this book and then kind of your more modern post-apocalyptic stuff is most of the sci-fi post-apocalyptic media you deal with now is after everything. It never really does a whole bunch with the active happening of said plague or fallout or whatever it is that they're dealing with. It's usually way past it, because in sci-fi it's it's the world of your characters just trying to overcome what they have been left with rather than what they were actively involved in. Whereas I think this one very much appreciates the idea that this is actively happening and they're dealing with it currently.
It's Generation Zero of the apocalypse,
right,
instead of Generation whatever.
Yeah, and I think a lot of sci-fis really don't.
Is a lot more down the line stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
That's true for sci-fi post-apocalyptic stories, but less true for horror ones.
Horror ones tend to do it more on, it's like this, I think it's more, we were talking about one recently. Oh, micro-apocalypses, I think was what we were talking about. Because I mentioned that micro-apocalypses, from my standpoint, are usually more interesting because they're insulated and the outside world doesn't know about it.
Like phantoms?
Because there's a real stake. There's a real stake, because the outside world doesn't know this is happening. So you're all on your own kind of deal. Whereas with these more global big ones, it's generally more, it's on a grander scale. And I think things like World War Z, things like, throw Dart at random horror movie that involves some sort of outbreak. I mean, it all basically pulls from
Quiet
this.
Place, Walking Dead.
Yeah, but it's a global thing, and they all just they all kind of handle it the same way. Like, it's not really a new formula. But I could see where a lot of them pull with this one. This one does a better job, I think, of explaining how it comes about and how
it uses something in the real world as opposed to like zombies.
It doesn't just make something up like.
And then the aliens that could only hear arrived, but no one tried shooting them in the face with a shotgun.
Were they aliens?
Yes.
Oh,
I think like the one I can think of the most recently that I've watched, which this is not exactly recent, was World War Z. World War Z made it like a rabies virus.
Yeah.
Like with a zombie outbreak and stuff like that. And that's like the closest thing I've come to being like, okay, I could kind of buy that. But then there's other ones where they just like throw something out there. They don't explain what it is. They just make something up and just expect you to believe it.
I think the most recent one, maybe Bird Box.
I haven't seen it.
I liked it, but it's Sandra Bullock, so I'm biased.
That's like
Sunday B.
She's A tier Salma Hayek. If Salma Hayek is S tier, Sandra Bullock is like the A tier.
Which one's Salma Hayek?
The From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay,
He's
thank you.
joking.
Oh, is he?
No, I don't remember actors and actresses' names very well.
Snake Bikini.
Okay, yeah, just tell me a character. I know characters.
Santonika Pandemonium.
Thank you.
Okay. To be fair, I only learned about that name when he asked me about it when we did our lists. Because I had to look that up and be like, she has a fucking name? Holy shit.
Her character has a name. Just ask George Lucas. Every character in that cantina scene had a name.
He just picks it. He has like a bowl just filled with vows that he pulls out and he slaps them on a table.
Yeah, more or less. Okay. So, do you think that King succeeded in making a modern day Lord of the Rings?
No.
How did he not?
Because I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Okay.
I only have the movies to compare to.
Compare them to the movies.
Okay. Aside from being on
the basic story is the same.
I mean, I can't compare them. Like, it's a long quest. I've seen long quests before. Like, it's not new. Like, Lord of the Rings is the grandest and most long of quests. And I don't know. To me, I just don't see a comparison. You could say it's the Stephen King version of Lord of the Rings, but I'm just like, well, I mean, so Star Wars is the Lord of the Rings version of Star Wars. I mean, I'm saying like there's long epics that exist, and comparing them all to each other just seems.
But he set out. That's what he wanted to do. That was his goal.
I think he failed.
Okay. Can you give a reason? If you can't, that's fine.
They just don't feel the same. Like, Lord of the Rings is just kind of one of those, like... I'll tell you the big reason, I think. At least the Fellowship liked each other most of the time. I think. Like, there's no real character bonding to me that goes past everybody just meeting up with Mother Abigail. Like, yes, Mother Abigail is the quest. Yes, I get that. But to me, like, the characters didn't really have... I think it lacked the character depth.
I think Tom and Nick have a pretty strong relationship. I think Stu and Fran have a pretty strong relationship. I think
not among all each other though. Like individually,
it's
yes.
the same in the Lord of the Rings.
Is it? I haven't read the books compared to. Like,
well, it's the same. It's the same in the movies.
I don't know. I feel like I felt like there was a bond between all of them in the movies. Like they still all generally liked each other. Whereas in The Stand, I just don't feel like that was the case. The bonding wasn't as affectionate, I guess. The truth is, I just don't have a good answer. I just don't. When I read this, I'm never going to think of Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Simple version.
Is it my turn now?
I mean, yeah. I just made an ass out of myself. Your turn.
I think in some respects he succeeds, and in other respects he fails. I'm going to start with failures. As Ryan knows, because it's one of the things that I talked to him about that's not about this podcast, I've been playing Final Fantasy XII. A game to me that feels a lot more like Lord of the Rings than this book does, and it's not because it's fantasy. It's because the world has this built-in lore that it expects you to be able to garner from, like, just little bits of information without spelling it out to you. Like, it has this tribe of people here, and you kind of pick up what their culture's like from how they talk to you and what they do, as opposed to having to read like a wiki page on it in game. cities and armies have their own like built-in lore and rules that you're able to glean from all this little information. And in Lord of the Rings, you can tell that from like the way armor's designed, the way people carry themselves, the way dwarves are responding to elves. This book doesn't really have a lot of that because it takes place in a very real-world setting. So unless you're going, oh, well, this is how the United States related to its virus production to China, to me that doesn't feel the same at all. Where I do think it feels the same is in character interaction. How characters build their interpersonal relationships and their rivalries and their jealousies. Harold is sort of like an amalgamation of a bunch of characters, but when I read it this time around, he really kind of reminded me of Gollum, but his precious was unfortunately Fran. Or that's what he wanted, his precious. It was his obsession. And that's, where his ultimate downfall started coming from, was being an orbiter, not able to let that stuff go. And that's where I think it succeeds, where in terms of like actual world building and feeling like its own lived-in universe, which I think is one of the Lord of the Rings' greatest strengths, at least in terms of the movies. I haven't read the books, but the movies do also feel that way to me. I think that's where it kind of falls short.
Yeah, his sounds better.
I mostly agree with everything you said. Yeah. There's not really direct correlations between Lord of the Ring and the Stand characters, but there are, so using a Gollum as an example, I think that there are Gollum Smeagol traits in Harold, Trash Can Man, and Leo. In most of the Lord of the Rings characters, you can see parts of them in various characters throughout the Stand.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it was like in characterization, and how they interacted with each other in the end is where I think that this book has its strengths and its ties to being like Lord of the Rings, which Stephen King is always really big on characters. So that's probably what he set out to do. If I had to form a guess, that when he said he wants to write Lord of the Rings, he wants to write these interpersonal connections and how people fail at their friendships and how they reform them, and how people rise to the occasion or maybe fail in the end.
I think that for me, it also feels like Lord of the Rings in some ways and kind of fails in other ways, the same as you. And the ways that it feels like that, basically everything you said about characters, and relationships between the characters. There is an element of the fellowship about a particular 9 characters in this book that I do feel like they're a type of fellowship, and they also break. The same as the fellowship breaks in the Lord of the Rings, and there's a lot of parallels there. But the other way that I feel like it really succeeds is just grand scale themes and using geography to exacerbate those themes. Just for instance, in the Lord of the Rings, it's very much east and west are used to describe good and evil. Mordor and Sauron are often referred to as the East, the evil in the East. And the good factions of Middle-earth, the free folk of Middle-earth, specifically the humans, are often referred to as the West, the men of the West. Aragorn says, "Men of the West, unite!" And the Stand does the same thing, except it flips them, and it uses Las Vegas and Boulder to be the good and the bad.
Okay.
So, come back to Lord of the Rings kind of throughout it.
Actually, that's kind of on point, because whenever we get to a Koontz of mine, it actually is Lord of the Rings related.
Okay, cool.
Mine's Mace Windu related.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Alright, so we're moving to characters. I've got a group of Boulder characters, a group of Las Vegas characters, and then we'll open it up if anybody wants to mention characters that we haven't previously talked about. But we'll start with a character, and then we'll just kind of get general impressions on that character, and then I'm going to ask, what was their stand? How did they make this, or did they not? Just kind of, what was the resolution of their story?
I think I have some pretty good answers.
I came up with answers for most of them. Maybe some of them are reaching a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. All right, so we're going to start with Boulder. And we're going to start with maybe not like... He's not the protagonist, but he's definitely like the Bill Denbrough of this book, where he's like the protagonist of the protagonists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our guy, Stuart Redman. And we're going to let you kick it off since this is your first time on this book. What are just kind of your general thoughts on Stu?
You never forget your first time.
He was there. He participated in things.
Until he didn't.
Stu is... he's like your... I don't know, I always want to call him Ace most of the time, because he's just like the dude that's just like, he's your captain. Like, he's like almost the... He's the captain of the ship, but he just has no real super deep depth to him. Like, I think he's too good most of the time.
He's a very simple dude.
He is. He's a very simple dude. I agree with that. And as I don't really have a lot to say on Stu, just because he's, to me, like, he's
Ben Mears, but he's not a writer.
He reminds me of a guy who's going to grow into Judd.
I think so, yes.
Like, over time. Like,
I think that is true. In fact, well, we won't get into that,
but... I don't have a lot to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also don't have a lot to say. He has a lot of, like, protagonist energy qualities. But not in very unique ways. It's very straight to the point, sort of, this is a good dude sort of stuff. Maybe not in a particularly lazy way, just in a particularly, this book was written in the 70s and it's been done so much sort of way that now when I read it...
So, to me, he's kind of the polar opposite of Harold Lauder.
Yeah.
In that, I think most people would say that Harold is a very interesting character, but a very bad person, whereas Stu isn't so much of an interesting character, but he's probably, if not the number one, he's one of, if you had to pick a character from the stand to have a beer with, Stu would probably be close to the top of that list.
Yeah, and he would tell you about the Rudd.
Yeah.
I even imagine he talks like that.
I was very disinterested in Stu the first time I read at this book, and he's not my favorite character of the second read, but I paid a little more attention to him and his arc, and I feel a little bit better about him overall. But I do want to point out that the beginning of the book kind of makes it a point to make him feel like what people might call like an icky, like good old boys kind of character. Like, when he's by himself in, like, Vermont, walking by himself, he's reflecting back on the good old times with his friends. And those good old times are the time his friend was drinking and driving and wrecked his car, or the time that they went to Mexico and got $20 hookers, or like the card games where...
Ryan, that's a deal. Have you seen how expensive hookers are?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, his good times that he's recollecting are these very, like, morally questionable things.
Friend turns down Harold and ends up with syphilis.
He also, like, mentions that one of his friends from the group, has too strong a hand with his children. And he's like, but he kind of turns a blind eye to that. Like, so...
It was the 70s in Texas. What do you want?
But he kind of grows up through the course of the book.
I think Stu's most interesting point of the book is the most least liked part of the book, which is that last little bit that he and Tom are going back to Boulder. And honestly, I think that's the best of Stu we get. And it's kind of in the part of the book I like the least.
I'm shitting myself, Tom. Like...
Okay, so what is Stu's stand? How and when does he make his stand?
Do you want me? Oh, okay. You're waving at somebody. I thought you were waving at me.
Neither of you. I have a very definitive...
I have a definitive answer, too.
Okay.
It's when he breaks his leg and he tells them to keep going.
Exactly.
I think it's probably one of the more clear ones.
I was able to appreciate Stu a little bit more on this second read because it starts out by establishing that he's a very quiet dude and he kind of hangs out with these good old boys who
he just kind of rolls with.
Over the course of the book, he learns to kind of be a leader. And in book 2, as he's like moderating all these meetings, like Fran has this thought that he doesn't even realize how natural of a leader he is. And then in book 3, when he breaks his leg, his stand is that he has to let Larry lead instead.
Yep.
Even though that's been his whole story. That's been his arc. He grows up, but then he has to wrest control to somebody else.
God wants me to starve to death. You guys go on.
I'm gonna eat this dog if it stops bringing me stuff.
So that, in and of itself, makes me feel better about Stu overall, but he's still nowhere as interesting as a lot of the other characters in this book. Any other thoughts on Stuart Redman, played by Gary Sinise and Lieutenant Dan and Cyclops?
I think those are decent casting choices.
Yeah, they're both good.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say.
All right, Franny Goldsmith.
This poor woman gets the biggest fuck you I've ever heard of in a third act of a book.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like she's so good in that first part. Like there's all this like build up with her, and then he just does nothing with her. Mother Abigail sends the boys out to go do the boy things, and Fran's just like, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna stay here because I'm pregnant. I'm like, that sounds dumb, but I promise you that's how I think this worked.
He even she gets injured in the explosion, which could have been I still would have been mad, but it could have been an excuse as to why she doesn't go. But Mother Abigail uses her white magic to heal her.
I thought she had black magic.
No, she has white magic.
Okay.
Black magic is Randall Flagg.
Okay.
But he's a white man with black magic, and she's a black woman with white magic.
Yin yang.
It's not confusing at all.
Yeah, Fran is far and away my favorite character in book 1, and one of the better characters in book 2, and then just is ultimately shit on. It was my overall Koontz for the book the first time we read it.
The only thing that helped me on this read is I pictured her as Fran Smith from American Dad the entire time I was reading this.
I think Fran...
Harold was Steve.
Fran felt very real. Like, very much like... Just very... I'm trying to think of how to, like, describe this without sounding offensive. It sounds stupid.
Just sound offensive. He'll bleep you out.
Okay.
I do only have one day to edit this.
Oh, okay. Then don't sound offensive.
Okay. Well, I have had... I've had a child. My wife was pregnant. Fran has a lot of the kind of random kind of crying moments that I feel like happen.
She has some hormonal
very
moments.
Hormonal, right? Yeah, like in her hormonal moments feel very real because of how scattered it is.
I agree.
Because it's very random that she'll have these things. Like one day, like one point, I think where she, like when her dad dies, I think is the big one, because like she talks about how she cries like 4 separate times just getting him down the stairs, and she's doing it while she's pregnant, and there's all these random thoughts that are happening to her as she's doing it. So even though she's very focused on her one goal, she has like 12 or more things happening as she's doing this one thing. And to me, as a man, like from the other side, that's what a lot of pregnancy for me was seeing my wife have a lot of these very hormonal stressors that just kind of seem to come out of nowhere, even though that's what happens, that's what goes on with it. So Fran felt very real to me in that aspect, where she's like this throughout a lot of the book. She just has a lot of these very emotional moments that don't really have to be explained, but they feel very real.
I like how,
and you don't have to explain them.
I like how assertive she started off. Like
I love how she handles Jess.
Yeah, like Yeah, I'm gonna keep the baby, but I really don't want you around.
Mm-hmm. Not really in love with you anymore.
I'm burying my parents, Harold. Please leave me alone.
Yeah, this is not an appropriate time to chit-chat.
Yeah, like, show up and wear your trench coat and fedora later, please.
Yeah.
God, that's like the equivalent of what he was doing, was what he thought a badass would be doing.
I love how she handles Jess. I love her relationship with her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's the polar opposite, I also love her relationship with her mom. For different reasons.
Yeah.
I like how she handles Harold in book 1.
Yeah.
She makes some questionable choices in book 2, but I don't think it's really her fault.
I don't think it's her fault. But if you even suspected Harold was half as bad as he ended up being, and there are points where she kind of does, don't keep a journal writing about how much you hate him.
She knew from the beginning how bad Harold was, but she never trusted herself enough.
That would have been my advice, is don't keep a journal expressing your true thoughts and feelings about the psychopath that's sleeping next to you.
I would have just said, you've never liked Harold. The first time you see him post Captain Trips, you get a terrible, terrible feeling about him. Go with your gut. It doesn't matter if he's the only other guy out there.
Yeah.
Like,
that's like the only time when she's shaky, I think, too, is with Harold. Because like most of the other time in that first book, she's very steadfast in how she feels, and she acknowledges her feelings very openly. Whereas I think Harold's kind of like, that's that desolation she has in the aftermath. Like, there's literally nobody else. So,
and also, I think she feels some responsibility because
he's younger.
He's younger. He's under 18. He's technically a child, and she was family friends with his family.
He's bawling his eyes out.
Yeah, she feels guilty about how
I shouldn't have laughed.
How she and Amy treated him, and how the town treated him.
Yeah, but
she knew it all along. She knew it in her gut.
I'm just gonna pin these rejection letters with a knife to my wall. I can't remember if he did that in the book, or if that's
no. I think that's just in the miniseries.
Okay,
yeah, but that was something that Stephen King
actually did.
Was the one that where he's watching them like fuck in the woods, and he's just like creepy watching them too.
And
like damn,
and even that. This is a little bit of this is going into Harold just a tiny bit, but even that wasn't enough for him to call it quits. He still had to read the journal first. that's how obsessed he was.
That makes sense for Harold, though. It's in print, and he lived his entire life in print.
Yep,
that's so fucking smart.
Yep,
smartest thing I've said in the evening.
That he respected.
Yeah,
and then we don't have to go on and on about how big a disappointment her role in book 3 is.
Yeah, we can though.
I mean, Stephen King himself acknowledges it in that he wrote an entire episode. That new miniseries is only 10 episodes long, but he decided to devote a full 10% of that to writing an entire episode to try and give Fran her stand.
He tries to fix it.
He tries, and like. I appreciate the effort, and I appreciate the acknowledgement that you made a mistake in this original book, but I think it's just like it's what's done is done.
Yeah, I can't because I don't remember the episode. I
wanted to rewatch it.
I remember not liking it, but remembering that
we were also so just negative by that point.
Yeah, I remember we were just kind of like, well, he tried, but that's all we can say.
Yeah,
but anyway,
more or less, just the general premise of the episode is. It's about Stu and Fran as they're on their way back to Maine, and she has a face-to-face confrontation with Flag. Which is cool because, like, Glenn aside, no one else really does that.
Yeah.
But it just kind of felt... Fuck the Pippin.
It felt almost like fan fiction to me.
Yeah, exactly. Even though
it was written by the dude.
By Stephen King.
But that's what it felt. That's what my memory of it feels like.
Yeah.
So I got to preface that because watching it like in a vacuum, I might feel better.
Yeah, which I still intend to do that before I start.
I might do that tonight after the gym.
Yeah, I'm not rewatching the whole.
No,
What I might do is rewatch the first episode because that's all Harold.
I love the first.
And then the last episode is Fran stuff.
Yeah. What was her stand?
She didn't have one.
I would argue she didn't.
Yeah, she didn't have one.
Like,
she kept the baby.
I don't know. You finally realized, like, finally going with her gut and trying to get into Harold's house to see the book. I don't know.
I feel like this is reaching. But if I'm going to call anything her stand, it's that she is the one who pulls the trigger and says, let's leave Boulder. And because maybe Stu never would have said that. And, like, obviously, like, Boulder is heading in a direction that's questionable.
It's going back to the old world. I'd rather have you deliver my baby without any medical help.
Yeah, well...
in Maine.
I mean, that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But, like, also... I think I may have done the same thing. Like, of course, I may have never... I probably would have went to Vegas. I probably never went to Boulder, so I wouldn't have...
I have a pathological fear that I would have gone to Vegas.
Yeah, I think I would have went to Vegas.
That my moral feelings would have shown through, and that's where I would have ended up.
I think that I would have went to the more organized place, the place that had power and phones, and... I might have regretted it once I got there.
I came to watch the crucifixion.
But yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Any other thoughts on Franny?
She deserved more.
She did. She absolutely did.
Yes. Concur.
Molly Ringwald and Odessa Young in the new one.
I've heard that name. I can't think of who it is.
The only thing she did... Molly Ringwald was actually a little disappointing. I love Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
But she was kind of disappointing. Odessa Young, I think that's her name. She did a really great job. She's probably the best performance in that show except for
Harold.
30-year difference between her and James Marsden.
Oh, okay.
It was just kind of awkward. So, like, she's 25. How old is James Marsden?
Oh, he's easily... He has to be at least, like, mid-40s. I'm going to say.
He's 50, so 25-year difference.
Yeah.
Not that there's
anything wrong with that.
But when you're just looking at it and looking at them kissing each other on TV, it's a little weird.
Oh, it's me in 20 years.
Yeah. Oh. If you look like that in 20 years, then...
then I can get away with it.
Yeah. Okay. Baby, can you dig your man? He's a righteous man.
He's also the second.
You're a taker, Larry.
You're a taker.
You ain't no nice guy.
You ain't no nice guy, Larry.
Daniel, do you want to kick off our discussion of Larry Underwood?
He's my second favorite character.
After Harold?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the second best character after Harold, I think.
Yay!
I understand why you guys say that. I understand why Daniel finds Larry relatable. I do not find him relatable at all.
No, I don't find him relatable.
I've purposefully been not referring to myself in the third person for this episode.
I think I give him a little bit extra points because I think he's the only one that has, like, a progressive arc.
He has a much more obvious arc than Stu. Like, I gave my argument. I think Stu has an arc, but Larry's is much more on the nose.
Yes.
It's very pronounced.
Yes.
Yeah.
It also makes logical sense for the journey he goes through.
Yes.
You get to see the ups and downs of it. You get to spend a lot of time with how he goes back and forth on his ratings of people. Especially, like, his early ratings of Harold. Like, he's seeing Harold from, like, an outside perspective, and he's only seeing, like, this investigation aspect of him and going, man, this guy...
Inspector Underwood is on the case.
Man, this guy's so fucking smart. I'm glad people are with him. He's probably keeping them alive.
And he does, to some extent.
But it's interesting. Those are just interesting perspectives to me. I also like a rock star down on hard times, but still has this, like, full of himself attitude. And then he gets hit with some doses of reality a lot.
I just continually get mad at him in book one. I'm just yelling at him all the time. You're like, you dumbass. You're so bad to your mom. You're so bad to these women.
What was the line? He goes back in the tent. I was gonna fuck her.
Yeah.
And I hate it because I know that if I was traveling with a woman and I found her dead, and I had just gone in with that intention that might have been my first thought, that would have been Daniel's, like, horrible moment. I would have been like, I feel bad afterwards, but, like, I read that line both times, and I was like, yeah, no, I get it, dude.
I think the first time I read the book, where I was just like the most mad at him, is that exact moment where he just chickens out and doesn't bury her.
He just can't even bury her.
No, he just leaves her there with her mouth full of vomit in that tent, and just like, I mean, I know from like a practical sense, does it matter if a dead body is in the ground or not? No. But, you know, we're raised a certain way, and it seems like utterly disrespectful.
He should have at least set the tent on fire.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
something.
Just give her a Darth Vader. Like,
yeah. I mean, you could have just torn the tent down, wrapped her in that, and buried that. Like, you didn't have to drag her body out or anything.
But, I mean, because, like, he's such a dumb shit in book 1, then he gets to have all this growth in book 2 and book 3.
And it's kind of... And it's horrible, but I can also kind of I can understand the choices he makes when he's making them.
Yeah.
Like, of course he doesn't want to have breakfast with the girl he just slept with. It's a one-night stand. He wants to one-night stand.
He wanted his rocks, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, not that one so much for me, but...
Yeah.
So, one for me where it is Rita in her shoes. It's like, I would have also gotten, like, duh, obviously you can't walk 20 blocks in, like, sandals. But the reaction he has to it is just way too over the top. But I also probably would have gotten mad.
Yeah, especially at that point, you're the one carrying everything. You're the one making all the choices.
But I also would have been, like, half mad at myself for not saying, hey, you need tennis shoes and socks.
Don't scream. Take a deep breath and go, we just got to push through and we will find a shoe place. Yeah. We can ransack anywhere. We can find a body.
That's where I'm less critical of Larry, because when in these situations we're talking about here where, like, he constantly kind of, like, I couldn't say constantly, but in the earlier books where he kind of overreacts to things, the pros of him is that most of the time he's self-aware and understands. He's like, that was stupid, why did I do that?
Yeah, but it's after he's already grown up.
It is. But it, again, as the book goes, and like you said, he grows up from that and kind of learns from that. And there's how many people actually do that? I think it's a mark in his favor.
Yeah, but
he gets better.
He only does it
because he's made the mistake.
Well, he only does it because of Captain Trips.
Yeah.
Early in the book, his mom says, "You're a taker, Larry, and I don't think you're ever going to become a giver unless something radical happens." And that radical thing is Captain Trips.
I also do relate whenever something bad happens and going home to mommy.
I don't know. I'm also, Larry is one of those things where I fall victim to this most of the time. It's not Larry himself, but like in characters like Larry, I try really hard to see the good. And I granted, that bites me sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would always rather kind of have the belief that you can get better, and you can do better, and you will do better.
And he does.
Yeah. And to me, like, that's a mark of something that I'm very proud of with Larry as I go through the book.
I completely agree.
Which is on theme for the book.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So what is your favorite relationship that Larry has in this book?
His imagined relationship with Harold before actually meeting Harold. Because it's almost like a parasocial relationship you would see these days, where people are like big fans of a YouTuber and they have an idea of who this person is, and they're like, oh, I bet and then they meet their hero, and it's not the person you've built up in your head. And for this, he's following candy bars and little signs, and he builds up this relationship to where he's almost dependent on it. And then when it's not what he thought, he almost doesn't know what to do with himself.
I didn't care for really any particular relationship he had. Mainly just, I mean, he's like anybody else. You know, you handle it as you handle it. Larry's biggest relationship, I think with, oh God, what is her name? The one that died. No, the one that died. Rita. I liked that dynamic because it was
Heather Graham in the new one.
Ooh.
Yeah. Not everything's bad.
Damn, I lost my train of thought. I liked that relationship because like it was granted it was like it is obviously his lowest point in the whole book is that relationship. Like that's his rock bottom to me. Yeah. Like it does not get worse. And like even when I was reading it, I had whenever like he came back into the tent and he's just like, all right, we're gonna get on here, and she's dead. Like I'm like, fuck. What do you do? And he just does the worst, like not the worst, but I mean it's up there. It's just like he did nothing. He chose to do nothing.
He is this other than having sex.
Other than there was a hot minute when I thought he was gonna.
That would have been too much.
I thought he was gonna for a minute.
Dude, even my mind didn't go there.
I thought he was gonna, but like then he like has to like. I don't know, he meets Nadine and stuff like that. Like, for me, like, that's kind of the quintessential relationship for him because it shows really just kind of shitty he is and that he has nowhere to go but up from there. And again, I've got a soft spot for, like, hit rock bottom, start climbing out. And I think that's an important point for his story is when he hits that rock bottom. So I find that to be the most valuable relationship he has in the book.
So for me, my favorite relationship that Larry has is also my favorite relationship between two characters, period, in this book. And it's with a character that we have barely mentioned, and it's between Larry and Leo. And something that I didn't pick up on the first time I read, but I really focused on the second time, is that what saves Larry, I think, and what actually causes him to grow up is the love for and responsibility that he feels for being Leo's guardian. Yeah. And it feels very real to me. My experience in my personal life and with some other people I've known is that a lot of people say, oh, you grow up when you get married and you have kids. When you find a serious relationship and have kids, it's never the getting married and the relationship that makes a person grow up. I've known, I'm not sending daggers, I swear, Daniel. I've known a lot of people who have gotten married and one or both parties are still act like selfish teenagers.
What?
And obviously the same is true of parents, but I think more often than not, it's becoming responsible for a child that makes a person grow up. And that's where I see like Larry's like greatest moment is when he learns to love Leo and grows up because of it.
He gets his Mandalorian arc.
Yeah, exactly.
I generally agree. I mean, it's a good relationship. Like I like all of Larry's relationships. I've found to be, and if you're talking about the relationship romantic drama, like I think Larry's is like the high points. Like you've got Lucy, you've got Nadine, you've got Leo as well. Like all of his relationships not only make sense, but they're also like generally character building for all parties. Yeah. And I think you get the most reward from those relationships because generally with Larry being the focal point, he's the best and the worst of those relationships.
I did go, another Larry chapter a lot, so.
Generally speaking, his chapters are very good. I think they're mostly better than Stu chapters. Some of them are better than some Fran chapters, but I think if you look at, like, except for maybe Nick, I think between him and Stu and Fran, maybe his chapters are the most consistently entertaining.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going. Nick Andros.
Are we not going to do his stand?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's so obvious. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's still going to Vegas.
Yeah, it's just going to Vegas. Yeah. He knows he's going to die, but he's doing it for Leo and for Lucy and for Boulder and also for himself because he's finally going to be a giver and not a taker.
Yeah.
So in a way, he's also doing it for his mom. Mm-hmm. I like to, I'm not a religious person, but I do like to think that Larry's mom is watching him from wherever she is, and she's finally proud of her son.
Had a boy.
Yeah.
I can dig this man.
Baby, can you dig your man? I did get a little triggered by how constantly that phrase shows up in book one. Like, I get it.
I remember the first time we read this, I was surprised by how often the N-word was used, and it's almost always around Larry.
He does associate himself with some questionable people.
Like his mom, you sounded like an N-word. And I was like, wow.
Why do you sing like an N-word?
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Reading it a second time didn't help.
And then, of course, they make his character black in the new miniseries, which completely worked.
And then, but then the cover for Baby Can You Dig Your Man sounds like a white guy.
I can't remember what it sounds like very much.
Yeah.
And just real quick, I remember, like, really disliking the guy who plays Larry in the original miniseries.
He was like a greaser.
Yeah.
And had his hair slicked back.
It looked like he was like a John Travolta.
He looked more circa 1950s than 70s sort of star.
I like the guy who plays Larry in the new one more.
Yeah.
Okay. Nick Andros.
I'm still mad at his death. He was the cool, like, in terms of, like, just overall cool characters, like, Nick was just the coolest character in the book. Like, just having his, you know, being with the disabilities he had and the way that, like, his chapters are kind of told from, you know, what he can do versus what he can't. I think that's probably that's what makes his chapter so interesting, is because, like, that seems like a very interesting creative process for you as the reader to, like, experience, because there's so many of those senses that you don't think about, that you don't have, or your inability to speak with somebody, and the way that his character interactions and his, you know, affections for people kind of go back and forth through the book is so different from everybody else's. And I think that's very, like, that right there to me is probably King's highest point of writing in this book, is just Nick himself, because there's so many things that you would not think about as a writer or even just a person in general when you're describing a person who's handling a legitimately debilitating disability. And I think that that's not only really admirable, but it's also just really interesting to read about. So Nick's stuff is just super interesting to read to me, not just because he's a cool dude, but because he's literally explaining a story to you in a way that you very rarely get to experience.
I think when I first read it, my two favorite characters were Fran and Nick, and they both have very like really, really good, pretty good, and then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They found his teeth. Damn.
I just keep going back to Mother Abigail just building him up and building up. I thought Nick was meant to lead, but now you will have to lead Stuart. I'm like, you kept telling us Nick was going to lead.
That was really a setup that I was just like, I get it's like, you know, like
God had different plans.
Yeah, I get that, but it still felt like kind of a cheese.
God looked at the script and went, he's had all his character development. Larry's turn.
But not really, even, because he doesn't, like, how much actual, like, development
he doesn't grow much, because he's already just a genuinely
flat line.
I think he kind of gains confidence.
Yeah.
But
I think he's like he
looks better with an eye patch.
Yeah. Nick's already kind of a person that's just so good that he doesn't really have to justify a lot of the stuff that he does, or doesn't have to have the arguments with himself that he does. And that's both his best quality and I think his greatest weakness as a character, is that it's not that he, like, the difference is and this is just me, his limitations are what make him interesting. Because he has taken the best of those limitations and come out to be not only a good person, but somebody who can succeed in this new world, even though he has such a handicap. But that's also kind of rough on the character portion of it, because there's not really anything that grows either. There are points, but nothing, not to the dramatic effect of, like, some of the other ones.
There could have been, like, he could have had some sort of flaw. Like
he could have, but he didn't.
He didn't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I see this as King's, almost in a way, it's sort of King's greatest failure. One of his better successes, but at the same time one of his greatest failures, because I think that had he written this book 10 years later, Fran and Nick both would have had better arcs and just better resolutions to their story. And often when we're reading books like this, I don't waste a lot of time thinking about what could have been. I just take it as it is and criticize what's there. I have a hard time doing that with this book specifically because I know how much more capable of a writer Stephen King became in later decades. And I think this is probably his most ambitious book. And I just can't help but thinking like how much better it could have been had he written it later in life.
I generally agree with that.
I liked when he died because I still didn't believe it happened. I was like, when are they going to find him under some rubble? For like...
Well, I thought, and he kind of does, but I always kind of viewed him at, well, both he and Mother Abigail are both kind of the Gandalf of the group. And I really was convinced that he was going to come back in book 3. And he does.
I have a voice now.
But Stu would have died had, presumably Stu would have died, had Nick not appeared in Tom's dreams and told him what to do. But it's just so much weaker of a way to end such a strong character. Especially, I mean, think about everything that Gandalf does when he comes back, and it's not even comparable.
I am Nick the White.
Probably not appropriate to say Mother Abigail the White. And she also doesn't come back. Except for at the end of the 94 miniseries. With her creepy floating face. Oh my god, that was so bad.
You couldn't call her Abigail the Black either.
No.
The Gray?
The Gray.
Alright, so Nick, Daniel, you didn't really talk about Nick.
I just don't have a lot to say. He read very flat for me this time. I think a lot of the stuff around him is interesting, how he communicates interesting. But like in terms of his character, I'm like, he's a good dude who he befriends the special needs guy he finds, doesn't leave him alone. He makes morally right decisions. There's not a lot of growth for me to talk about.
Nick's stand?
Going for the bomb. I don't know. Oh, traveling with Tom. I also don't know.
I think, like Fran, any stand you can come up with for Nick is kind of a stretch.
It's kind of a stretch. Oh, his ghost coming back. He's like, hey, dude, I needed one more scene.
Alright, there's penicillin, there's amoxicillin, there's a blah, 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 blah.
He's pretty bad off, so you should probably just put it all in him.
Make sure he drinks lots of juice.
Just get a syringe and inject it directly into his neck.
And I'm telling you, you better start wiping him now, because otherwise his butt's gonna break out, and that's gonna suck.
For
M-O-O-N, that spells bed sores. Okay. We gotta keep going. Harold. Go ahead, Dave.
My favorite character.
I would not argue that he's probably the best written and most interesting character in the book.
I will not say that he did nothing wrong. Because the entire reason I like him is because I kept wanting him to not do something wrong, and then he did it.
Let's pause you. Talk about Harold.
Harold is like a constant state of edging for you as the reader. Like, he's always just so close to being, like, going the right direction. And the worst part is, he talks about it. He talks about doing the right thing. You know he knows it's the right thing. And he was not Hawk. He was not Hawk.
Was he Hawk at the end?
I mean, he jumped.
He did jump.
No. He just... Again, it's like he just could never quite get there, and he had all. That's what Harold pissed me off. That's what it is. Like, I don't feel sorry for Harold in any way, shape, or form. But I was just constantly mad at him because, like, he was always within, like, tasting distance of being a good individual.
He's like Larry, but Larry goes the opposite way.
Right. Yeah. That's what makes I think their journeys more interesting, is because they face their conflicts, but they handle it. They both know what they're supposed to do, or what the correct thing is to do.
Larry is Luke, and Harold is Anakin.
Yeah, I would get that. Yeah, no, Harold is just always he's like, every single time.
It's so frustrating.
I was telling you all about how there were times where, like, you know, sometimes you just read a book and you just have to put it down to be like kind of what I got. I put this book down at least 6 goddamn times because I just sat there and went, fucking Harold, and just like would put the book down and walked out for a minute and just be like, okay, it's fine. But
it's so strange. The first time I read this book, I knew there was no way he was actually going to get his redemption arc. But Stephen King kept tricking me.
That's what I mean. He was edging.
And then I read it again, and I'm like, oh no, this time will be different, Daniel. He'll fuck Nadine, and everything will be good.
One of the few, probably the only way that I think the more recent miniseries improves on the book is it gives an actual confrontation scene between Fran and Harold, where she actually confronts him and is like, I know everything, and they actually, like, to use I can't exactly describe, but they have a fight, like there's action between them.
They have a little tussle.
Yeah.
A climax,
yeah. Because it, you know, once they find out that Harold and Nadine are, you know, on the side, on Randall Flagg's side, they disappear, and that confrontation never happens. So I was really disappointed the first time I read this book with how Harold just so randomly dies, because he's like one of the biggest characters and he's so built up in book 1 and book 2, and then at the beginning of book 3 he just like slips on an oil slick and dies. And that was the part where the first time I was reading it, I was just so done with book 3 because I was so pissed about that. Now, rereading it, probably the biggest change I've had between first and second read is his death makes so much more sense to me, like how he dies, because his whole issue is that he couldn't get over the image he has of himself in his head about how his life is supposed to be.
Yeah, these delusions of grandeur.
But he's just like anybody else. He dies in just this random car. It's not random because Flagg sets him up.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. Well, he does know that. But I mean, he has this like random death. He falls off a motorcycle and dies, and it's very ironic and appropriate to how Harold thought of himself.
And his body's just out there to rot.
And it sucks that Harold's not involved in the climax of the book because he's such an important character. But it's a fitting punishment for him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I also think that his character just doesn't really fit into that final stage of everything.
Where would you put
like
him?
where? Yeah, what would he do?
Because he has this like sense of self-importance, but where is he going to stack in the hierarchy in Vegas?
Well, I think that the only other way you could do it is if he has his redemption, if he tries to save Larry and Ralph.
Yeah.
If he's there with Flagg and Lloyd and he tries to save them.
And I honestly think his character is better without... He had his choice and he made it, and that's his consequence, is being discarded.
Yeah.
He faces the ability to be redeemed several times, and he fails at all of them. And him being with Flagg over on that far side doesn't... To me, that just like puts him in a weird place where he just doesn't... His character not only doesn't flourish, but then it just becomes boring. Because then he has nothing really to do except be subservient and just bitch more.
It's just one small thing, and it's not that important.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree, Nadine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest flip I have is I hated his death the first time I read it. Now I feel it's appropriate and right.
Yeah. I also feel that way, but I liked reading him so much that I missed him.
Yeah, no, I wanted him to be more involved in book 3, just like Fran and just like Nick.
But yeah, book 3 is just such a weird place when I think with the rest of the book. We can go in later, I guess. I just don't have a lot to... I'll tell you what, I'll just wait. It's fine. It's going to be a rant.
Harold stand.
He slipped.
Whether or not to actually fuck Nadine.
I think his stand is when he ultimately makes the wrong choice. The point where he says, it's very early in the book where he's reading Fran's diary and he knows, I can be okay with this. I can let it go. this is the turning point in my life. I can just be happy with the life that I could have with these people and let go of Fran. And he says no. And his stand is, I'm going to try to live up to the image of myself in my head. And I think that's his stand. It's a negative one, but I think that's what it is.
How's it going, Hawk?
Yeah, I think that's...
He even got a nickname.
Yeah, it's a cool one, too.
And he wasn't, like, on the committee, but, like, people respected him, and...
He was going to... The opposition would form around Harold. He gets to be, like... He gets to form the it's going to be a two-party system. But he gets to be the leader of the other party.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there going, like... That's the thing, is, like, the image he had in his head, he was actually sort of getting, but because it wasn't...
It wasn't exactly...
Exactly. It wasn't, like, with Fran. It wasn't on the committee, but he had friends and a nickname, and people respected his opinion.
He could never take people at their word. He always thought that even if they were giving him compliments and acting like they liked him, he always thought that they had some ulterior motive.
Yeah.
He had no confidence, which is a lot of people's problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe if he could have just realized that Teddy Wyzak was his friend and called him Hawk because he liked him and they could have just been buds. And maybe if he could have realized that if he would have stuck it in Nadine, she would have...
Yeah, then it's... She, I mean, he can't read her mind, and she's just sitting there going, man, just stick it in me so I can come.
Yeah. And then we can just have, like, a real thing. But like I told you earlier when we were texting, like, if he made the right decision...
then the book doesn't kind of...
The book would have sucked.
Yeah. Just the climax doesn't happen.
He's the one... There are elements of Gollum in him, but I think he's the one who's the closest to a one-to-one correlation with a member of the Fellowship, and that's obviously Boromir. Boromir has a very distinct image of himself in his head. He's very in love with his own glory and the glory of Gondor, and like how his father views him, and he cannot accept that taking the ring to Gondor is the wrong mistake, and that leads to his downfall. The difference between Boromir and Harold is that Boromir has his fall, but then he has a chance to redeem himself, and he takes it. Harold does not.
All right.
Except for one or two of these. Now we can start being a little quicker with these.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively speaking.
Okay. A character that I really liked the first time and kind of got on my nerves a lot the second time, but I'll let one of you kick it off. Professor Glenn Bateman.
I was also kind of teetered on this guy a lot. Now, granted, I would say he probably has the best payoff.
He
though.
Absolutely has.
Oh my God, he has the best payoff.
Yeah.
Do it, pussy.
Do it, basically. It was so good. Like, it was the rest of the book. He just kind of meanders around being an old dude that was a professor, and he just rambles on and on. And there's several points in the book where, like, you're listening to him talk about these things, and I can honestly tell you that the entire time that I was reading this, I was like, flip.
You sound like a real liberal.
It wasn't even that. I was just like, I'm bored. Okay, stop talking. Great. Like, it was not... Like, he was just boring most of the time, but again, when they go to Vegas, whatever like that, and he basically just starts mouthing off Flag, I'm just like, okay.
Great payoff.
That was my thing. I was just like, you know what? Everything you did is forgiven. This is great.
So...
You don't know any better.
I like... Well, of course, I have a history degree, and I did sociology classes and anthropology classes. I enjoyed all of his rants, and that's why I liked the character the first time I read the book. I think the difference is the second time around, when I'm listening to all of these sociological rants that he has, I don't like that he's presenting them as fact instead of theories, and it kind of turned me off to the character a little bit the second go around.
He's sounding very undergrad.
that's not how I would put it, but I understand what you're saying. But I like all of that stuff. I think the first time I read it, I actually liked book 2 a little more than book 1, because I found the start of a civilization and like how do you start a society from zero, and how do you build a government, and how do you kind of corral the people. Like, I thought all that was super interesting.
It's like anthropology kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But I mean, that stuff is my jam. Like, I like this. I like social sciences, and I totally understand if somebody who doesn't, it would be less interesting. Just like if you like the mechanics of the combustion engine, you would be interested in listening to somebody talk about that, but I don't, so I wouldn't.
If you really want to just hear someone talk about a gun for 50 pages, you read Tom Clancy.
Which I do not, so I will not.
The metallic shaft that ran along the ridge. If you it's fucking mechanic porn.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I don't have anything to add.
Glenn, stand.
You do it, pussy.
Do it, pussy.
I think there's something a little less obvious than that.
Okay.
It's somebody, and he says it multiple times. I think his stand is letting go of his own worldview, and that he has said multiple times throughout the story that he's been agnostic his entire life, but he's the first character to say, I think this will be resolved by white magic, by Mother Abigail's god. And he's the first one, I believe he's the first one to say, we should just do what she says. We should just go along with the rules that she puts in place. I think that's how we win. But by doing that, he's completely letting go of the worldview that he's established throughout his entire life. And he's also an intellectual and an academic, meaning that he's literally paid to just talk about these things. And letting go of your own worldview and accepting someone else's wholehearted is something that almost no one can do.
Maybe the do-it pussies were the friends we made along the way.
It's the confidence he gained by letting go.
Yeah. I loved how succinctly he put that. I just can't match it.
No, you're right.
Okay, now, I actually didn't even include this character the first time I made this list.
Yeah.
But he's so important, but he's not.
Yeah.
And that's Ralph Brittner. He's one of the Fellowship. He's on the committee. He's one of the 4 that go to Las Vegas. He's right there with Larry at the end. But, what do you think of Ralph?
I forgot who he was half the time. I had to. This was the character I had to constantly remind myself, who the fuck is this? Mm-hmm. And he's in a lot of the book. He's
there all the time.
Yeah, he is in a lot of it. But my God, I had the worst time trying to remember which. I kept getting him and Glenn confused for a little bit. Not because of anything specific, but
Glenn is pretty distinct.
Well, I kept getting the names confused, not the characters, the names. Yeah, but
that's fair.
Ralph, I just never
both generic white guy names.
Yeah, and Ralph was just kind of he was your everyman. I think he was just generally okay at everything.
You made the joke that Stu was present, but I think Ralph was the one who was really present.
He was I don't remember how many hobbits there were. He was the 5th hobbit.
Fatty Bulger was the 5th hobbit. There are actually 5 hobbits involved in Frodo's conspiracy.
Okay.
But Fatty is the one who stays in the Shire to. Okay, I'm going to try not to go too deep off here, but in the novels, to cover Frodo and Sam's trip to bring the ring to Rivendell, which was their original goal, Frodo actually sells Bag End and moves to Buckland, which is where Merry's people live, which is actually a separate Hobbit nation. And he buys a little house there, and he's going to pretend to live there, but he's actually going to leave the Shire to take the ring with Sam to Rivendell so that the elves can figure out what to do with it. And up until the point where they actually leave the Shire, there are 4 of them. There's Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Fatty Bulger. And
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you keep saying Fatty Bulger and
It's his name.
I know, but I'm just thinking of a crotch.
Yeah, it's a good porn name.
Hey, Manny, I'm sorry.
But his job was to stay at Frodo's new house in Buckland and keep up appearances as if Frodo was still living there, so that nobody would suspect that Frodo had left the Shire.
Yeah, it's Ralph.
And he actually gets attacked and beat up by the Nazgul. And they come back, and he was like seriously injured because he had to fight the Nazgul by himself.
That sounds epic.
Yeah.
I took on 9 of them.
Not 9 of them, but...
Yeah, taking on more than one Nazgul, I think, gets you some points.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a hobbit.
Yeah. But no. Yeah, there were 5 hobbits.
Okay, so...
I really need to read these books.
Can we clip this tangent and make that a short?
Sure.
I think that's really funny.
Okay. I guess Ralph makes a stand? I mean, because he's afraid and he goes to Vegas?
I mean, that's...
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if Mother Abigail...
I mean, I probably wouldn't have gone.
If Mother Abigail wishes, I guess.
Yeah, he does... He is a bit of a Mother Abigail simp.
Yeah, he's a yes man for the church.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
All right. I know what to say, and that's Moon, and that spells laws yes, Tom Cullen.
Oh, I was waiting the whole episode to do that.
Oh, I beat you to it. I think Tom ultimately has got to be one of my absolute favorite characters.
I really, he's my third.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, me. Sorry.
Sorry.
No. Tom is a good... Where, Nick has, his kind of, like, standard of, like, almost a perfect kind of character, like, in terms of, like, he's just a generally overall good person.
Minus maybe fucking a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Tom is a good person, but for the completely different reasons. And it's mainly just because he lives in kind of a constant state of innocence. Like, he can't really quite understand or grasp adult concepts. So he's kind of just that character that is kind of the innocence of the fellowship or whatever, how you want to gather it, I don't know. But, like, he's just an endearing character because he's just doing his best. He's your hey buddy character of the book. And I love the hey buddy.
He's not Dr. Cody.
I 100% disagree. I think he is totally a, hey Tom, you want to do this? Yeah! So we do it.
Just have to
they even hypnotized him. Like, he's just like, do this.
So I think now's a good time to mention, in modern days, this book has been heavily criticized for some things, some of which I think there are some fair criticisms, and then there are some things that maybe people take a little far, and there are absolutely some inappropriate and not sensitive depictions of minorities in this book, particularly with this character and the next character we're going to discuss. I just want to say that we're going to acknowledge that stuff, but we're not here to talk about that. We
are not going to dwell.
There are other content creators who maybe belong to those minorities who can give you a better perspective than we can. So definitely check that stuff out. But I definitely acknowledge and agree with a lot of the fire that this book comes under. Like, when I was Googling it, one of the I didn't read the article because I'm American. I just read headlines. But the headline was The Stand is a bloated racist novel, but it's a masterpiece, which is kind of true. But okay, so more about Tom.
Sorry, I think that's a Facebook post somewhere. It sounds like really like. Here's my opinion. Also, this.
Yeah.
Just slide that in there real subtly. I wish we got more of Tom. Honestly, I don't think we got a whole lot, as much as we could have.
I think you get more on Tom than some of these other characters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think there could have been more. But it's also like writing.
It's also hard to justify putting him in much more.
And writing a mentally handicapped character is hard.
Yeah. Now I both like and dislike this, because, like, to me, one of the better parts of book 3, weirdly, is Stu and Tom's journey back home. I really like that story, like that whole story. But the problem with it I have with it is that I didn't like it at the end of the book.
I think it's well written and a good story, but by that point, both times I've read it, I'm so ready to.
I'm just ready to be done. Yeah,
like I don't need any of it.
I agree. So I mean, and this is where this is to me, this is Stu's best character building, is at the end of the book. Like that's when I like him the most. And Tom's kind of in that same way where like he's an endearing character, and you're getting a little bit more of him that shows that kind of innocent, I just want to help, I just want to do my best kind of thing. And they're both really good aspects of the story for these characters, but they're at the end of the book where you're just ready to be done with it. And I think it suffers from that.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of where Daniel was saying it needs to be longer or it needs to be shorter. Because it feels like the book actually ends halfway through book 3.
Yeah.
And then there's more.
And then it keeps going.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, the exact same thing happens in The Lord of the Rings. They destroy the ring halfway through I'm sorry. So The Lord of the Rings is actually broken up in 6 books. Fellowship is book 1 and 2, Two Towers is book 3 and 4, and Return of the King is book 5 and 6. The ring is destroyed halfway through book 6. And then you get a long epilogue. The difference is that Tolkien it's just a much higher quality epilogue in The Lord of the Rings than in The Stand. But it essentially does the same thing that Tolkien does in The Lord of the Rings.
All right.
There's stuff after they destroy the ring.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the movie, like, the Return of the King is famous for having, 7 endings, and the book does the same thing, but even more.
Like the hobbits go to war, it's like a whole thing.
I mean, yeah, the battle at the Black Gate isn't even the last battle. There's the final battle of the War of the Ring is the battle of Bywater, which is the battle that occurs in the Shire once Frodo and company return to the Shire in 3019.
See, I'm starting to retain a little bit of this.
I'm learning a whole lot more about Lord of the Rings than I anticipated coming in here tonight.
So, in the movie, well, not even in the theatrical, they cut it out of the theatrical version, but in the extended version of the movies, you see Saruman get killed in Isengard, but in the books, he and Wormtongue actually escape Isengard and go to the Shire and take over the Shire while they're still doing the last part of Return of the King and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and Gondor and all that stuff. So when Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin return to Shire, they return to a corrupted Shire where Saruman has corrupted the sheriffs, who are the law enforcement of the I don't need to get into all of it, but basically they have to get a Hobbit militia and fight Saruman and his thugs.
And they're all like, do it, pussy.
Actually, Frodo's like, don't do it.
Oh, okay.
He's the only one who doesn't take a life, but that's all. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But yeah, it's the same thing. The ring is destroyed and Sauron is demised, and then the book keeps going. It's just Lord of the Rings is better than The Stand, which is why you don't see a lot of criticism of that. In fact, it's the opposite. People criticize the movies for not including the Battle of Bywater, but it just would not have worked at all.
Awesome.
Tom Collin, everybody.
Awesome.
Does Tom have a stand?
Yes, I think it's at the end of after everything's done, when he has to help Stu get back to Boulder, because this, despite the fact that Nick helps, talks him through stuff or like that, there's still a level of independence that Tom has to have that he hadn't had since Nick died. I would say that is his stand.
I don't have a definitive answer for this. I don't disagree with what you said, but I don't know. Daniel, do you have thoughts?
I like his answer better. I was gonna say going to spy in Las Vegas, he's.
I don't say that.
Getting hypnotized.
Yeah, I say the hypnotism kind of takes that one out for me.
I will say, and some people may know that I am the parent of a special needs person. I struggle a lot. Both times I read this book, I struggle a lot with the spies and them sending Tom, and especially with them hypnotizing Tom. I think logically everything that Nick says makes perfect sense, but like Fran, I can't swallow it. But of course, had they not done that, then Stu would have died for sure. But it's still like, I don't think that I don't need to dwell on it, but it feels icky to me.
Like the idea that that's sort of like that whole segment is Stephen King arguing with himself, eventually being like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do it."
Yeah, yeah. It's just one of those things that feels icky, but don't want to dwell on.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of things that feel icky, but I don't want to dwell on it. Our first patron, Mother Abigail. And just to acknowledge a bit of the controversy with this character, Stephen King, unfortunately, has a reputation for having groups of white characters who are saved by a magical black character.
There's an entire trope named after it.
The whole role of this, and it would not be so bad if she weren't the only black character in the book, but she is, and her role seems to be to save the white people. And the same thing happens in The Shining with Dick Halloran. The same thing happens in The Talisman. I forget that character's name, but it's the same thing. Oh, and real quick, if you really like Tom Cullen, read The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub, because basically Tom Cullen is ported into The Talisman as a different character, but same character, different name, except he's also a werewolf.
I like this. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It is awesome. The book itself is a little too long and kind of a struggle, but the highs are very high, including Tom Cullen werewolf.
I like how you sell things to me using werewolves.
I mean, werewolves are sweet.
Also, it has a werewolf.
Yeah, so it has a werewolf. All right. So kind of setting that, acknowledging that controversy, there are other content creators who could give you a better perspective on that. But talking about Mother Abigail as a character in this book, Daniel, why don't you go ahead? I feel like
you want me to go first?
Well, I feel like Hef and I have spoken more than you have on this.
I don't have a lot to say about Mother Abigail, other than the tropes that sort of exist around her. Because for better or worse, Stephen King, he might not have created the trope, but the trope is largely attributed to his writings.
So, focusing on some positives for Mother A that don't have to do with that, and this is a chapter that was not included in the original version. I really like her origin chapter that just explains about her life, and more importantly, her family and the land. And I really like her own like mini quest to go get eggs. I'm sorry, I should have thrown to you, Hef. What are your thoughts on Mother A?
I like eggs. I mean, they're awesome. I don't...
you gotta get that protein.
She, goddamn, for 35-year-old woman, I mean, she's doing better than anybody else would have.
I'll get you, weasels.
That was so comical to me to imagine in my head.
Is it, in the version of the book I have, one of the like drawn pictures is her versus the weasels.
That's one of my favorites, if not my favorite. Yeah. Bernie Wrightson, the guy who illustrated Creepshow and Psycho of the Werewolf, did illustrations for these, and they're all awesome.
Yeah.
Especially the kid in the car surrounded by wolves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I have... Mother Abigail is one of those characters I was kind of torn on, mainly just because I feel she's a character that has to exist because of the good versus evil nature of the book that it's relaying to you. But I also just kind of felt icky sometimes whenever I was reading about her. Like, she's a sweetheart. I mean, I love her.
As a person.
Her as a person is wonderful.
As long as you don't get her talking about Democrats, yeah.
That was my favorite part.
And her origin,
sure it was.
Her origin story is genuinely like heart-tugging. Like
her singing the song.
The song was I loved it. But the rest of it just kind of feels like she's just this magical witchy woman that is just kind of there because she has to be, and it just kind of didn't.
You're sounding like a New York Democrat.
What if?
I don't think New York is correct.
What if Stephen King gave her role as Randall Flagg's opposite to Nick? And Nick was the inherently good character that had white magic.
I think that would have worked, like, in all honesty. Like, Mother Abigail being removed.
Oh, Nick, yeah.
Yeah, and Nick taking that place, I actually think that solves a little bit of a gripe I have about it. But, I mean, overall, it is what it is. We can't change it. It's like, that's what this book is. It is kind of like you get to the end of it and, like, it has its failures. It is what it is. But Mother Abigail, I don't think was a failure as a character as much as a design.
In the
you go ahead.
In the 94 miniseries, they really, and I'm not sure if there's a better term. I'm sure there is a better term, but I don't. They play up her blackisms. She's very down-homey Southern black.
It's what the character is.
And then when Whoopi Goldberg plays her in the 2020, they walk back on all of that, obviously. But then she feels a lot less like a character. And I think I don't think there is a middle ground. I think the character is just kind of inherently flawed, and you either have to roll with it or don't.
I guess I will say this, and this will be the only thing I speak on any controversy regarding Mother Abigail. In a vacuum, I wouldn't call it a controversy. It's the fact that it became a trope that makes it a controversy. That it's repeatedly used, especially by Stephen King.
Yeah.
If this was the only time he did this specific thing, I don't think anyone would even think about it. Or if more of the characters were black.
The character, no, that's what I'm saying. If if two other characters were black, then it wouldn't matter. Like if Larry was black, I think Larry just works as a black character. The character from the Talisman is Speedy Parker.
Man, I love these names. He's so good at naming people.
And Wolf, that's the Tom Cullen character.
It's just Wolf.
His name is Wolf.
Does he hunt a bunch of aliens in a small town?
No.
I'd watch that movie.
It is a movie.
Oh, it is?
And
it's Alien versus Predator Requiem.
Oh.
Sunlight Gardner is a cult leader.
Sunlight Gardner.
So the main character is Jack Sawyer, and he's like a 10-year-old boy. And he gets paired up with Wolf, and he is a mentally handicapped werewolf. He is Tom Cullen, but he's also a werewolf. And they get trapped in a home for like wayward boys that's actually a cult run by this guy named Sunlight Gardner. And actually, the Talisman books also tie into Dark Tower, so maybe we'll do those at some point too.
Okay.
All right.
Sunlight Gardner sounds like a Final Fantasy villain.
It wouldn't have been as bad if there were other black characters in the book, or if Stephen King didn't do this, like with Dick Halloran in The Shining, or with Speedy Parker in The Talisman. There are probably other examples.
And then there are other people also started using the trope. But if it existed in a vacuum, but the problem is I'm reading this book in 2023. And I've seen this trope done so many times, so it doesn't matter if this is the first one.
You could also say Mike from It in a way, because he's the only black character, and he's the one who has to stay behind, and he has to be the one that like helps them like
who doesn't have a super successful career because
he has to help them reintegrate themselves to Derry and Derry's lore. And
well, but when we say can it be worse, and then It Chapter 2 comes out,
let's also make him a drug addict.
Okay, I'm done. But okay, that's all I really had to say on her was, I think in a vacuum she's completely fine. But unfortunately, I don't live in a vacuum. I have all of this other context around it.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, and just wrapping up Boulder, Kojak, Big Steve,
good boy.
He's a good dog.
He's a good boy.
He's a good dog. I'd like to see him fight Cujo.
Next time on Death Battle. Well, the next Death Battle is Scooby-Doo versus Courage the Cowardly Dog. So
that was such a good crossover movie. I really enjoyed that movie. That should have been in my top 5 crossovers.
I didn't know that was a crossover.
Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
Wow.
I think it came out in like 2020 or 2021.
I'm gonna have to see that now.
just want to show you guys that this is a real thing.
I feel like Scooby-Doo crossovers are generally pretty good, though.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
consistently.
Batman.
Well, hell,
like,
even they had a Supernatural
Abbott and
crossover.
Costello.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It's actually really good.
I've never watched Supernatural, though.
You don't have to. It's great. Like, just the episode, I think it's Scooby Natural is what the episode's called. It's actually pretty good. It's hilarious.
Straight out of nowhere, Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I know what I'm doing later.
Yeah.
What's your offer?
Close this. All right, we got to keep going. All right, Las Vegas. Thankfully, we don't have as many. All right. You name one. So we're going to play a game. I'm going to say a name, and then you say one, and then you say one, and then back to me. And we're going to go around and around until we can't say a name.
Like any name at all?
No. For this character.
It's his
Randall Flagg.
The Dark Man.
The Walking Man.
Richard Fry.
I read the book once. The Smiling Man? Is that right?
That's what I was going to use. I'm out.
Okay.
I thought it was the Walking Dude.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, they literally like used more than 20.
Yeah, there was a bunch.
There was a bunch.
All right.
It's like our William Afton joke, only way longer.
All right. Daniel, why don't you tell us about what are your thoughts on Randall Flagg?
I dressed up as him again for Halloween. I don't want to buy another Halloween costume. He's the reason I started wearing jean jackets.
Oh, wow.
I swear it has a list.
Was that Alexander Skarsgård?
Yeah, he plays him in the new one.
Oh my god, the tall man.
Wow. Okay.
Head case.
So I'm going to go over, here's the list that the Stephen King wiki has, and this isn't complete. The Man in Black, Randall Flagg, The Ageless Stranger, The Walking Dude, The Dark Man, Beelzebub, Legion, Anubis, Naharthotep, The Hard Case, The Tall Man, The Midnight Rambler, The Antagonist, The Grinning Man, Old Creeping Judas, Richard Fry, Robert Frank, Ramsey Forrest, Robert Fremont, Richard Fremantle, The Monster, The Man with No Face, Raymond Figler, Russell Faraday, Martin Broadcloak, just spelled differently, and Walter Hodgie. There are, I swear there are more, too.
I like the molten pig iron.
Do you have any thoughts on the character?
I'm trying to think of how to word this.
I don't know, molten pig iron is pretty good.
He's delightfully inconsistent. I think it's done on purpose. Because there are these times where he's like portrayed as this very meticulous planner who's like 10 steps ahead of everyone else. That's how he gets Vegas organized. But at the same time, he's so short-tempered that he fucking throws Nadine off of a roof because she goads him a little bit. And there's like a lot of little examples of that in the book where his powers and what he's capable of seeing seems like he sells himself as all powerful, but he's clearly not. I think one of the best examples of that is like his relationship with like the trash can man, where anyone with any sort of foresight should know, maybe I shouldn't put this guy in charge of this job, even though this is the dude who would actually go do that job. He makes a bunch of little decisions like that. I think he's really ominous, but there's not a lot of depth to him.
So, this character is my Koontz of the book. I dislike this character a lot, and I found him to be the most obnoxious part about the book as a rule, for a couple reasons. One was kind of like what you were saying, where you would consider him like delightful, but also very chaotic. Okay. I just did not buy this guy as the chief antagonist of what was otherwise conceived to be a very very good versus evil story. He was too over the top, too wacky. There wasn't enough conciseness in it, and I did not like that. And this is what I was talking about with the Lord of the Rings deal. So in Lord of the Rings, and you've brought this up to me before, and I think this is an excellent example, Sauron is a character that you never actually, as the reader, interact with.
Not in the Lord of the Rings, no.
Right, in Lord of the Rings, so like, he is this presence.
He is an actual physical being. Now, he has supernatural powers, but he's a corporeal being in the Lord of the Rings novels who never appears in a scene. He's just alluded to and spoken of, as opposed to the movies where they, instead of making him a corporeal being, they make him more of like a spiritual symbol of this big red eye that lives on top of the Tower of Barad-dûr.
Okay, so for a story like this, I think of a villain like that works astoundingly well. And in this book, it is exactly the problem I had with Flag. We saw and heard way too much from him. I did not like that. I didn't like that we saw, heard, and even to a point, I know it's supposed to be kind of ambiguous as to what he does, even to himself. I understand that. But I found him to be just the most obnoxious part about the entire journey and the entire book itself, because I think we saw and heard way too much from Randall Flagg as a rule.
Okay. I agree and I disagree. I think Flagg is best in book 1 and in book 2, where he's almost never present and it's mostly other people talking about him, and the little bit you get of actual Flagg is very brief.
It's also very mysterious in those books.
And that makes him feel a lot more like Sauron.
Yeah.
And then you get overexposed to him in book 3. It's not my Koontz. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you. But I think there either should have been way more of Flagg to establish his character better, or way less of him to make it, because his best parts were in the earlier part of the book where he's just more like somebody that some people refer to and talk about, rather than an actual character who interacts.
Oh, the first time the first chapter where you're meeting him, where he just kind of starts floating at the end of the chapter, that's a very cool chapter, like to listen about and read about. But to me, if that's all we got, and then the rest of it is just kind of in the background, to me that's great. Like, I just think we saw, to me personally, again, this is not fact. This is just the thing I had the biggest problem with buying into the book, was Randall Flagg.
That's fair. My biggest issue with Flagg is that his downfall feels really sudden. It's just like they're building him through book 1 and 2. He's so strong, he's so powerful, he's so ominous, and then just like all of a sudden, without explanation, things start falling apart in book 3. And it's just like he's lost his powers, and his influence is waning, and people are leaving Vegas, and it's not fleshed out as to why that is. And I think I would have felt better about Flagg if that part would have been longer and we would have gotten more to that, or if he wasn't so present in book 3.
And then he just gets to reappear in Africa anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also hard for me to kind of discuss him in a vacuum, because I just also have his roles in The Eyes of the Dragon and his role in The Dark Tower in the back of my head.
There's a gentleman at work that he's big into Stephen King, and I told him about this was one of the biggest problems I had with the book, and he did ask me, he's like, have you read The Dark Tower? I said, no, we are going to be doing that this year. And he said, your feelings may change after that.
He is, I think, the only other villain that even comes close is Pennywise in terms of being iconic, but he's probably the most iconic Stephen King villain. And the reason why he definitely gets a foot over Pennywise is because he appears in multiple books as opposed to the one. Right? Technically, Pennywise has cameos in other books. There's also a significant fan theory that he is Pennywise.
I was going to say, Stephen King alluded to that on Twitter.
There's also a theory that he is He Who Walks Among the Rows, which is the villain from Children of the
yes,
Corn.
R-O-W-S.
Yes, R-O-W-S.
I thought I told you that.
Yeah.
Or I did.
No,
I
you told that story.
I did tell that story. Yeah.
So I love Flag, but I'm also not looking at him just in this book. But just trying to look at it in a vacuum, I do like Flag, but I do think, like Fran and like Nick, he is somewhat flawed.
Yeah. This is why I didn't have a lot to say about him. There's not a lot of actual character to him, other than he goes from being 100% competent to throwing his wife off a roof.
Well, we just kind of assume he's competent.
Yeah.
We don't actually see him, like, making any of those calls or organizing anything.
Yeah, I guess for all I know, it could have been Lloyd.
Yeah.
But, you know, I assumed he was competent because everything was going right.
Yeah.
And then it stopped going right.
I think that's kind of like, where I have the general not caring for it, because, like, with Flag, there always kind of felt like an inconsistency rather than... Like, it's not... To me, it wasn't mysterious. It was just... He's inconsistent. Like, there's a difference between being genuinely mysterious and foreboding and then just not being consistent.
I think his first chapter in book 1 is very mysterious.
Yes.
Where it's just like, oh, and he was a part of every faction, and he lived on the extremes of both sides of society.
It's a great description.
He was in the Klan, and he did this.
Yeah, it's a great description.
Mm-hmm.
But that's such a build-up. And then the rest of it, he's just kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, so...
Okay. Well, obviously, as we go through all of these books, we're going to spend a lot more time on the walking dude. So we'll table him for now. My guy, Lloyd Henreid.
Love him.
I think what I decided after reading the book, reading the comics, and watching both miniseries, I think he might be my favorite character.
I think his interaction with his lawyer is like one of the high points.
Okay.
I think it's really funny to me.
He's one of the only villains, probably the only villain you see growth.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Like, that was what I was surprised the most about, was like, because in the beginning of the book, he seems kind of... He's just a dumb dude running around just shooting up people. And then after Flag takes him, like, he actually develops leadership. Mm-hmm. He develops an ability to be able to talk to people in a way that he needs to be able to either manipulate them or just talk to them like people to keep the systems going.
He is a great organizer.
Yes.
He's a great diplomat. He doesn't rule by fear the way that Flag does, but he builds relationships with the people in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of just go ahead and get it out there, I think his stand is that he decides to stay with Flag, even though I think he knows that it's wrong. But he decides that he owes it to Flag because Flag got him out of the worst situation of his life, and that just kind of fuck all the morals, and I'm just gonna not only am I loyal to Flag, but I'm also loyal to the community that I've helped build here in Las Vegas. And he's not only loyal to, he's very proud. It makes a point of saying, like, he has like a 6th grade education, but he's super proud of the fact that they have schools up and running with classes 5 days a week. Boulder doesn't have schools. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, they do in the second miniseries, but because Nadine becomes a teacher. But.
Lloyd is the Vegas the Vegas equal of what Larry would be. I think. So, yeah. Like they both have similar arcs, just very different directions.
Yeah, and he has, of the villains, he has the clearest arc.
I've thought this is my chair for the longest time. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
So I've been sitting here just doing this.
I thought you were making a move.
Yeah, and he's played by Miguel Ferrer, and
yeah, he is.
Who is just so awesome. He's so great.
I don't care how they describe him in the book. I will not picture anyone different.
I felt like there was I guess he's a little more white trashy in the book. Miguel Ferrer plays him a little cooler, but it's the radical adaptation is the newer one. Like, I don't even want to talk about that.
Who played him in the newer one?
I don't know his name, but he's just like super flamboyant.
I know that Ezra Miller plays Trash Can Man.
Lloyd Henry.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, it's the worst thing ever.
My laughing.
Nat Wolf, you remember?
Oh my god, yeah, was that like...
I'm not saying that Lloyd couldn't be flamboyant, it doesn't feel like the same character.
Ambiguously gay.
Yeah. Oh no, we'll watch a clip of Ezra Miller, but maybe not tonight. Maybe next time you're here.
Sure.
But Ezra Miller's Trash Command is literally the worst thing ever.
It's so bad it's my Koontz for this book.
Yeah,
because without this book, it couldn't exist.
He walks like a raptor, and he goes.
And apparently these were all his choices. He said he would do it if he got to play it his way.
And his costume is just BDSM leather. It's like leather underwear and straps.
He jerks off to something blowing up.
Yeah. It's the worst. There's probably a YouTube video that's just like all of his scenes combined. All right, we gotta keep going. All right, so
we talked about a lot of these other characters. Oh wait, we're still in Boulder, or Las Vegas.
Just the last two that I think we have to talk about.
Yeah.
Nadine Cross, Hef.
I probably would have succumbed to. The way that King describes her as being like she's young, but she's got like this kind of like gray rogue streak through her. I'm sitting there be like, oh god, she's hot. An X-Men. Oh god,
yeah, she's an X-Men.
Yeah. I don't think I would have been strong. Good for Larry. I don't think I would have been strong.
I would not have been strong.
No.
Of course, if I was Harold, I also would have just done it.
You would have just penetrated her without her consent.
I mean, she was sitting there. I guess she didn't verbalize it.
That's what consent is.
Yeah.
You can't consent telepathically.
I would have really, really tried to smooth the words. I'd have been like, no, please, like
negotiations.
You call it negotiations. Really, if she's on the tip of my dick, I'm really having a hard time with this. I'm going to say whatever you want me to say to make sure we go going. It's not going to happen.
She's pretty explicit. It's like from the beginning, we can do everything except this.
And because she would say that, it would be just so painful. It's like. Now all I can think of is that.
Belle, you can go anywhere in the castle except the West Wing. Do not go to the West Wing.
It's just like, cool. Where's the West? Where's the West Wing? Let me find a compass. Do you know where the book? I
don't know what direction west is, you motherfucker.
Lumiere, Cogsworth. I'm sorry, I'm going to the West Wing.
Westward.
She had an interesting place in the book, being the harbinger of the seed of evil.
Rosemary.
Yeah. She's... I don't know. I was kind of mid on her, like, as a overall character. Like, I think she...
I don't think the book would be the same without her. I think she's important to Larry's story. She's important to Harold's story. And she gives some amount of motivation for Flag. Because he wants to... What's the word for... Starts with a P for having
penetrate?
Kids. No. Well, yes, but... The word for having kids that starts with a P.
Procreate.
Procreate, yes. He wants to procreate.
I was going to say pomegranate.
Awesome.
Pomegranates do have lots of seeds.
Yes.
My biggest issue with Nadine... Nadine is related to my biggest issue with the book, which is my Koontz, is that I feel like the destiny is too explicit. The divine intervention is too explicit. For me, it should be more subtle if characters have a choice or if they're influenced by their own destiny. And it's way too explicit, and Nadine is probably the best example of that.
Next to the hand of God coming out of the sky.
That's... Oh my god, I hate it.
I also did not like it.
I hate it.
Yeah, there was points where this book really was on the nose with the religious, like, symbology, and when it hit, oh my god, it hit. And I wasn't about it.
Yeah, and I have a really good, like, I have something else to add to that. I'll save it for Kings and Koontz.
Sure.
All right. Does she have a stand?
Whether or not to fuck Flag, I guess.
I think by the point she was in Flag's presence, it was.
I think
it was a done deal.
As awful as it was, I mean, there wasn't. I don't think there was a stand, but the only argument, it was her getting raped. I hate to be that way, but
I agree. She told him no. She told him no, and she. But he don't care.
No, like so.
It was her not telling Harold I wanted it inside of me. Because she thought it, she just didn't verbalize it.
Well, I also would not want Harold Lauder to stick it inside of me, so no shade there.
She's sitting there like, I could come if you just actually fucked me.
Yeah.
Which I still find so... Is his tongue games that bad?
Well, yeah, because that's all about practice. Like, nobody is just like, I'm putting my face in a vagina for the first time and I'm king. You might think that, but no, like, oral sex is all about practice.
I guess, but she thinks his penis is going to be that much better. I don't know. I found that
because
really
she's
funny.
never had one.
Your face is in there and she's laughing, so you think she's enjoying it. That's the problem here.
It's like, just think about like blowjobs. Like if a woman puts your dick in her mouth and just.
God, I wish we had video.
I like it dry and sandpapery.
But that's like there's
teeth.
a technique to oral sex, and nobody's just going to inherently know how to do that. So of course Harold is bad at it.
I just think that entire scene is really funny.
I like that Nadine and Harold are technically both virgins, trying to figure out what the fuck to do with each other.
So we're going too long.
I know.
But I'm going to say this anyway because I donated blood yesterday. Do you guys know what a Power Red donation is?
No.
So it's where they hook you up and they take out the blood and it runs through a machine that removes the red blood cells and then it puts the plasma and the platelets back in you, and then it does it again. It takes another blood draw and then it puts the plasma and the platelets back. And it's good because they get double the amount of red blood cells that they would normally get from a donation.
Okay.
It takes forever. Like, I was on the table for like 45 minutes.
I'd kill myself. Oh my god.
As I'm laying there, two thoughts. Like, as she's prepping me and getting ready to stick me, as I'm laying there, the main thought that's going through my head is Nadine just yelling, "Harold, just stick it in me!" And then she did stick me, but she missed my vein. She had to stick me again. No. But I love it. So I'm staring there looking, like, actually, here, you can see right here. Look, Daniel.
Did you look her in the eye? just like, do it.
Just do it. Just do it.
No, I'm going to watch you do it, too. It's got to go here.
And I didn't play on my phone at all. I sat there and just, yeah. Just do it.
I'm gonna throw up.
Okay. All right, the Trash Can Man is our last essential character.
Worst ending of a character I've ever seen.
You think?
I do. I feel like this came out of nowhere. Like, he randomly shows up with a bomb.
I felt like that the first time I read it, too.
Okay. I just... And I don't know. His chapters were just too wacky, I think, for me.
Even the kid?
Buddy.
Can you believe that, Happy Crappy?
Buddy. Trash Can Man is...
I would piss cores if I could.
So, the Trash Can Man is the Stan's version of Patrick Hochstatter in It.
I love Patrick Hochstatter. That's one of the best.
I love Patrick Hochstatter.
I hated that whole section. And basically anything that involved the Trash Can Man, I just hated it. I didn't like it.
I love the
You didn't love the kid like molesting him with a gun and then going, "Get out of here, you homophobic slur."
No, not particularly, no.
I love the kid. The kid is so great. And that's why the comic is the best adaptation, because it's the only one that has the kid.
The best part of the kid is when he gets stuck in the car.
It's so good.
Waiting for the kid to eat him.
I really love that he's 5'3", and he does everything he can. So I'm picturing him like Wolverine. Just like this super short, tough character.
I pictured the guy from Jackass, the Wee Man.
Wee Man?
Yeah, I pictured Wee Man just with...
You were like, I must go even shorter.
Well, like, because like when he was describing like what this guy looked like, I know this isn't what he looked like, but in my head it went way more over the top. So I imagined him with like a peg leg. He had one eye, like he was a mini pirate for half of the time I was reading him, and then he just stopped it, like started to become less of a pirate and just more of like
Wee Man
in just a toga. I don't know why. It just got more and more stupid the more I
I guess I can't say anything. I purposely pictured Fran as Franny from American Dad, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you do that thing every so often where you'll like envision some characters as real people, but then some other ones are cartoons at the same time?
Yeah.
I've done that before, yeah.
The two of you I use as characters a lot.
I love how it's so seamless in your head. Like, you just do that without a problem.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because I watch so much anime.
It's actually funny because most books I read, I imagine as Gary Sinise. Like, they're like any just token dude in a book that has like no character-driven thing. They basically all look like kind of what Gary Sinise looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not because of this thing, but like generally they all kind of have that shaggy brown hair that just kind of stops here, fluffs out a bit, has some wings, not quite a lot, hair that comes down to about here, and a white shirt.
He has short hair in the stand.
Token white guy is what I imagine most of the time. And they always have wings in my imagination. I don't know why.
He has short hair in Forrest Gump too, because he has a buzz cut. He's
I know, but they all have the face of Gary Sinise.
Okay. I'm
sorry, I didn't mean for this to go off.
No, I'm not going to mansplain your visions to you.
I just want to clip Gary Sinise into another short now.
Okay. Jesus Christ, this is getting away. But I mean, I knew it would be long. All right. There are lots of other great characters.
We talked about a lot of these.
Yeah. So just quick shout out. Dana is really cool.
Oh, Dana's.
We're not going to go on about Dana because we don't have to.
I know, but she's so good.
She is really good.
Like
I really like Judge Ferris.
Judge Ferris is great. The Rat Man is a character that gets better in the adaptations because he's so random. And then a black man dressed as... There's another black character, the Rat Man.
Yeah.
But he's dressed as a pirate. It's just like... It's so bad.
The Rat Man.
The Rat Man.
Which adaptation was that?
The 94 one.
Okay.
In the 2021, the Rat Man is a woman. It's the Rat Woman.
Okay, that's right. I remember being disappointed.
Yeah.
I just wanted Lucy to be happy. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
And as far as side characters, that's all I wanted.
And
she seems like she'd do all right.
Yeah, I think she did fine. And the kid is... I love the kid. It's fine. It's fine. You don't. I'm okay with us being on the opposite, but I love the kid. He's great. But I also loved. I love Patrick Oxter.
Kill you all! I'll drive you crazy and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Scary shit. Is this book scary? We kind of already talked about this.
I mean, the first part is absolutely terrifying.
It is very scary, yeah.
Reading this in a pandemic ward will fucking terrify you.
It was worse in 2021 than it was in 2023, but still pretty scary.
Yeah.
What is the scariest scene?
The vignettes were pretty like just those things where he just randomly would just go off and be like, no, they weren't infected, but they died anyway.
Yeah,
I think
like that kind of got me.
I think the one for me, and it's another part that I found very strong, was when they were just describing how easily it spread from this person to this person.
Yeah, that kind of coincides.
Because then you
with
think
what I'm
about
going
that
to say.
whenever you're doing stuff in your everyday life. Is like, what is shaking this man's hand actually going to cost me?
We were big mask wearers for years, but we stopped a while ago and we haven't worn masks in a long time. But when we went and saw Five Nights at Freddy's the other night, and there was literally 200 people in that theater and it was basically sold out, I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if I should have brought, if I should have brought a mask. But I mean, it's whatever. But
yeah,
it's go ahead.
No, you're good. The other like part of the book I think that really got me was I can't remember what perspective it was told from, but it's the one where I think it's the security campus officers are talking back and forth about the college march.
So those are the town cops.
Yeah.
And the college students are marching.
Yeah.
And they're marching towards the soldiers, and the soldiers just
mow them down with machine guns.
That was bad.
Yeah.
That was bad.
that was another part that I was like reading, and that was not too long after I think we'd been hearing about like a shooting that was not happening, and it was just a little too real to read it, and from that perspective, that was what got me. The cops are narrating, being like, "This is too much. Please stop."
And in modern day, like there's so many stories about cops shooting people, but in this, like the cops are like the bystanders who are watching these children be killed by soldiers. And it's
graphic.
And the cops are like radioing to the soldiers like, please stop, they're just kids.
Right. It's too real. Like it was just it
was bad.
Harold reading the journal I still find extremely unnerving. Just the idea of somebody like getting a hold of your private information and they are a complete psychopath about it. That's terrifying.
I was more eerie with him watching him having sex with Bush.
No, I'm more okay with that.
I'm into that.
I'm not. I've walked in on people having sex before, and I've been on that opposite spectrum. It's really weird.
I like being watched. I just want to be included.
Yeah. So not so much scary, but something I felt a lot of tension about, and this could only happen because it was the second read, was the whole time Nick is taking care of those guys in the jail cell, and just knowing that Ray shows up and jumps him, but I couldn't remember exactly when it happened. And me picturing myself being a deaf, mute person who eventually becomes half blind, but knowing that you're going to get jumped at some point. But that was very tense for me. But otherwise, it mainly the scary shit is the stuff that just reminds me of COVID, but bad COVID. Not that COVID was good.
Escalated COVID.
Escalate, yes. COVID that spreads much, much faster and kills at a much higher rate.
Yes.
Oh my God! Are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
So Kings and Koontz. Have you already gave us our Koontz or your Koontz? But what is your King for Stephen King's The Stand?
My King was the immersive world building and just general, really flabbergasting that I got in part one, because part one just is. Part one might be, if I had to like put stuff into a singular, like favorite book period, if part one was its own book, part one would probably be my favorite book I read last year.
If it was like three separate novels, the way Lord of the Rings is three separate novels.
Right. Because part one impacted me as I was going through it in a way that I just really wasn't expecting to happen.
It's one of his best, like, period,
Yes.
The way the stand fails is following up to that.
I agree.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
it's the first one's a home run. The first part's such a home run, and it's like the points where like this is this to me, even though it's considered like a dark fantasy kind of deal. To me, part one is as close to like a real horror novel that I have read from Stephen King, next to like things like it, but it's kind of fantasy driven too in a lot.
I mean, book one specifically.
But I'm also like real world terror is much more impactful to me most of the time. So like this book, like this, like that first part of the book that's probably the scariest thing I've read this year, because it's too real at times.
Yeah, no, I probably agree. And your Koontz is Randall Flagg for your previous reasons.
Yeah, I went on my rant. I'm not gonna go again.
I'm curious. I'm gonna have you at the end of the Eyes of the Dragon episode update your opinion on Flagg, and then in the Gunslinger episode, now what do you think of Flagg?
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, a fun little challenge. I like it.
Daniel, do you remember what your original Kings and Koontz were?
I don't remember what my original King was. I think my original Koontz was the ending, and I think that's still gonna be my Koontz. Is it just it still falls apart for me. I'm still sitting there and I'm reading Stu and Tom, and I'm bored out of my skull, wondering what the point is, and I just didn't enjoy it. Other than that, eventually this leads me to an Ezra Miller casting. My King, I don't recall at all, but I'm going to go with the characters in general. Specifically, it's Harold and Larry really carry this book for me. and a few of the others, but those are the two that I really stick to like glue, because they're basically the better and worse parts of me, so.
I don't remember what my king was either. I'm pretty sure my Koontz was flopping, missing the landing, and not even trying to land on Fran. And that also branching out to include a couple other characters.
Yeah.
And it's going to stay the same. Like, some of the stuff, like Harold's death, I felt better about on a second read. But Fran, if anything, I felt worse. Like, she's so good, and I love her so much in book 1, and then it just shits the bed in book 3. Because the boys get to go, and the girl gets to stay and have her baby, and not... Yeah, not even... Okay. And then my king, I don't remember what my king was originally. My king is the segment that I opened this episode reading with Nick and Tom leaving Tom's home county and going to Wood County, because it was so Tolkien that it just gave me absolute goosebumps. Like, it just, like, it scared me so much, because it's just put me back to Samwise. Mr. Frodo, if I take one more step, then I'll be the furthest I've ever been away from home. And it was just like, oh my god, it's just so good.
I want to hear more about Sam.
I love that one too.
Samwise the Brave.
Laws, yes, Monn. That spells Samwise the Brave. The mighty elfin warrior. Okay. All right. Rankings, real quick. I didn't change it. It's still my number 11. It's under Firestarter and above Ring. The highs in the Stand are higher than they are in Firestarter, and yes, the Stand is a much more ambitious book than Firestarter, but Firestarter just doesn't fail in so many ways like the Stand does. It's just such a more consistently enjoyable read.
Yeah.
And this is your... Daniel, you had it as your number 9. All right. Also below Firestarter and above Phantoms, 2 spots above Ring.
If I was re-ranking it, I'd probably put it below Ring.
So it actually is dropping two slots. You really think Phantoms is better than the Stand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Phantoms is better than the Stand. I might change that if I reread it, but
I think Phantoms also falls apart in the third arc the same way in the third act the same way the Stand does.
Yeah, but
you take less of a beating to get there.
I think the third arc meant more to me in the Stand, so when it failed, it hurt more. It's like when the good kid fails.
Yeah, I guess my only counter to that is that the Phantoms doesn't have nearly as high highs. But so you said we could like restructure our lists at our anniversary episode. I actually went through and moved some stuff around, and I bumped Phantoms I actually bumped Phantoms down like 3 or 4 spots on my list.
Yeah.
Because I remember the bad parts. I don't remember the good parts.
And honestly, when we went through and we read The Ring, I think that was one of our better episodes and our better just times reading a book and then finding stuff I didn't enjoy when I first read it on my own, and then
I was so ready to hate it.
Yeah.
It's just like, that movie is so bad, I'm gonna hate this book. Actually, this book is really good.
Yeah.
All right, Hef, where do you place The Stand? I have a guess.
I toyed with this a lot, and
her pants are ready.
Pants are ready.
Unzipped.
I think it goes at number 5.
Oh, it's close.
And
Below Dracula and above Firestarter.
I think so. Firestarter, I really did like Firestarter, and I do agree with you that like consistently it's just better. But there are like that whole first part of The Stand just blew me away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've read something that punched me in the mouth quite that hard as what I read when I was doing that one.
If that was a solo book,
yes,
it would be better than most of the stuff we've read. I think that's true.
And the second part is still really good.
I agree.
Like, I think the second part still holds up, and it's really... I have the same problem with The Stand that I have about Phantoms, too. Like, it's... those first... the first two-thirds of that book are just pretty solid. And with Phantoms, I've said it before, if you just take out that one guy, I mean, the book's fine. And, the ending was kind of campy, but otherwise...
I think it's too campy.
Yeah, but I liked the beats of it, and The Stand really just overall, like, there's just some things that it's just really good. Like, it is really good. It's really just that third arc where everything falls apart. But I think on rereads, I will still enjoy the first parts of The Stand more than I will Firestarter overall.
Probably, yeah. And I think I agree. If I compared Firestarter to just book one, I probably prefer book one.
Yeah. If we're comparing, like, also The Stand with it, the what wins is character.
No character
inconsistency.
No character in this book even comes close to the Losers Club for me personally.
No. And they also, like, and I think where it has it gives its characters payoffs.
Yeah.
And
all of them.
And The Stand doesn't have that ability.
No.
So.
And Pennywise is much more of a consistent. Looking at The Stand in a vacuum, not taking in the other books into consideration, Pennywise is a much more consistent and scary villain than Flag is.
Yeah.
I understand his rules. There are a lot of times when I was reading this, I'm like, I don't understand the extent to Flag's power.
I'm going to give you just a little bit of a preview.
Yeah.
That's not going to get better.
Yeah.
There are not rules. In fact, that aspect of it is probably just going to continue to get worse for you.
Wow. Oh no.
What you understand about Randall Flagg is that you understand nothing about Randall Flagg. But you can hear more about that in our first episode, the first Sunday in December, where we discuss The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. All right, well, let's real quickly fire through these things. Ranking. Zombie Day. Okay, obviously Flag shows up in more stuff. The Shining is referenced by Mother Abigail. She says that Leo has what her grandparents called God's Shine.
Yeah, the Shine. I do remember that.
Castle Rock is mentioned. Castle Rock is where Cujo, part of the Dead Zone, Needful Things, and a lot of other Stephen King books take place. The writer from up there in Haven, Maine, who writes Westerns, is referenced, and that's Bobby Anderson, who is one of the two protagonists from the Tommyknockers. This is one of Stephen King's 4 books that take place heavily in Colorado. The other 3 are The Shining, Dr. Sleep, and Misery.
Oh god, Misery.
Yeah. He Who Walks Among the Rose, we already talked about. There are so many Tolkien references, I'm not going to name them because The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings are referenced a lot in The Stand. And a fun one, Metallica's album Ride the Lightning, they got that from a quote from The Stand, and the quote is, Why then you go on to death row at state prison and just enjoy all that good food until it's time to ride the lightning. It won't be long," which I believe is a quote from Lloyd's lawyer. Homework. Ugh. Jesus Christ. What does your New World community look like? After you leave Boulder or Vegas, where do you go? What do you do? Who from Boulder or Vegas do you try to recruit for your new community?
I'm going to be quick on mine.
Let's all be quick.
Okay, so...
Laws, yes.
I don't see myself doing very well in this new age, because much like Larry, I probably think better of Harold Lauder than I should. and I take him with me, and he betrays me, and I'm Nick Andros, and I'm dead before the actual end of the finale. That's the short version. I just want to trust people that pay for it.
I'd probably be in a similar boat.
I start a warband, and we go around and we start gathering a bunch of slaves, and you can earn your freedom if you can beat me in one-on-one combat, and I'm promptly beat to death by my first slave.
So with the exception of the winning against the combat, I was almost thinking in the book that he was going to go with the rape caravan.
No.
And I'm just sitting there being like, Daniel, no, Daniel.
No, we are a warband. We only...
No, you saved yourself. It's fine. You're good.
I take the Rat Man from Vegas and we start a pirate crew. Okay.
Gum Hammer.
Yeah, question for the listeners. This week's versus matchup is Ash Williams of Evil Dead fame versus Ash Ketchum of Pokemon fame.
Whoever wins fights her buddy Ash.
Yes. And then for further reading, if you like horror novels about plagues, I do recommend The Scarlet Plague and I Am Legend. Both are excellent. I have not read Earth Abides, but that's one of the books that this The Stand was influenced by. If you like epic fantasy, check out The Lord of the Rings and The Dark Tower. Duh. And if you like really long Stephen King novels, I also recommend It, The Tommyknockers, and Dreamcatcher.
Yes.
Anything to add?
Agreed. No.
All right, upcoming on The Horror of Babylon, our next 2 Sunday episodes on November 12th. That's not right. Okay, so the next Sunday, we are going to be wrapping up Exorcist coverage with the 2 Exorcist prequel films. We're going to do both in one episode. And then the following Sunday will be our next book episode. We are reading Battle Royale by Koshun Takami. Hef will be back for that. And then our next 2 Thursday bonus episodes are going to be the next 2 installments of the Dead-Ite-a-thon with Evil Dead on Evil Dead 2 on November 9th and Army of Darkness on November 16th. And I'm going to set a goal and say we're going to do that Evil Dead 2 episode in under 30 minutes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I believe in you.
Okay. And speaking of believing in someone, thank you to our patrons, Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Nebraska, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron, and Ben, the 4th Patron of Hope, and Mia the 5th, the Rainmaker.
She makes it rain, yeah.
Oh, which she should probably go to Nebraska with Abigail and let the corn needs rain.
And Mike Schmidt. Because he's
no, that's
he stared at his poster in Nebraska.
And thank you to Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which they don't have a location in Nebraska. Don't go there. But maybe Abigail and Mia can start one for the owner, Ronald III, Grampus of Christmas, and you can visit the actual stores at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can shop online at shop.horsemancomics.com and let them know that we sent you. And thank you, Daniel, for rereading The Stand, and thank you, Hef, for reading The Stand and recording a 3-hour episode that I have one day to edit.
I love The Boys.
Oh my god.
I don't think
I've never read The Boys.
I don't know that reference.
It's the comic series The Boys.
Oh.
I didn't know it was a comic book.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. Just watch the TV show.
Oh.
I will never ever do that.
Yeah.
I've heard of that's the okay. Yeah, I've been told really rough things about that show.
Yeah.
You can't, if you have children, you probably shouldn't watch it around the house. The house.
Should I watch it in the yard?
Yes.
I mean, provided you get permission from the FCC.
Maybe after
Look what they did to Peter Griffin. He shot his VCR.
I don't remember that.
I think it's a joke where he's got he hits record because he wants to watch a football game, and they bust in there like, do you have permission from the FCC and ABC to record this? And then he just holds up a contract and it's just like, it's just ABC.
Yeah.
And they fucking shoot his TV.
I do remember that one.
It's like one of the few good jokes I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Family Guy. Okay, well,
Stay scary.
stay scary. Thank you to our patrons. Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
Stay scary.
Stay scary, folks.
Damn you, Seth MacFarlane.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.